The story begins with a boy drenched in sweat and gasping for breath. In front of him, a dust-covered system appears, instructing him to turn left up ahead, but with one very clear rule: he must not jump out the window. He has to follow the rules. Irritated, the boy questions this. After all, he just robbed a bank, so why the hell should he obey anything? Meanwhile, some strange creatures start chasing him, telling him to stop. With no other option, he decides to jump out the window. But just as he thinks he's escaped, someone punches through the window and hits him square in the back. The boy falls to the ground, coughing up blood, while the creatures say that humans who break the rules are destined only for death, and that he should accept it and become their food. At that moment, he realizes he has no way out and reflects on who he is. Shenmue survived for 5 years since the start of the supernatural apocalypse, always being cautious and hiding, but in the end, he still got cornered in a dead end. He also knew that, despite being terrifying, those creatures loved money just as much as humans, except in their case, it was something called ghost coins. Tired of that miserable life, Shenmue decided to risk everything by using an epic-level spatial ring, which he had obtained by robbing an underworld bank. However, during his escape, he was cornered, broke the rules, and lost everything at the very last moment. Even so, he refuses to accept such an ending. At that moment, the ring begins to shine intensely. Suddenly, everything changes, and he wakes up inside a classroom, completely shaken, trying to understand if he has been reborn. In the classroom, people are talking about supernatural events happening in the city. A girl confirms she has heard about it too, explaining that those who break the rules suffer severe punishments. At best, they might lose a few arms or legs. At worst, it's certain death. When Shenmue looks at the calendar, he is shocked to see that it's December 31st, 2024. Realizing he has returned to the exact moment the apocalypse began, he wonders if he'll have to relive all that suffering again, but soon notices something surprising. The spatial ring is still with him, and all the ghost coins are still stored inside it. At that moment, he understands that things can be different this time, and remembers that the first supernatural scenario in Jiangcheng will take place right in that school. Soon after, the system appears again, announcing that the Midnight Cafeteria supernatural mission will begin shortly. A girl panics because she has no idea what it is, and the system informs her that she has been selected to be a waitress, ordering her to go to the cafeteria before midnight, making it clear that being late is unforgivable. Terrified, she says she doesn't want to go, and several students panic and begin to run away. Meanwhile, Shenmue walks calmly beside a girl who is crying, saying she doesn't want to die. He advises her to follow the rules coldly, explaining that entering the supernatural scenario is dangerous, but there is still a chance to survive, unlike being late, which means being erased immediately. This only makes the girl even more desperate. As he thinks, Shenmue clearly remembers the Midnight Cafeteria and realizes that the place has great potential and could be extremely useful in the future. With that in mind, he decides to begin his plan to dominate the apocalypse by buying that place. The system then reappears, warning that midnight is approaching and that late waiters will be erased in a countdown. Amid all this, 3 girls are with Shenmue, and one of them, a redhead, approaches him desperately asking for protection. However, he has no patience and immediately tells her to back off, even pushing her away with a slap. At that moment, a woman appears floating and orders everyone to be silent, introducing herself as the manager of the Midnight Cafeteria. She explains the rules. The first is that customers are extremely valuable, and everyone must satisfy their demands without exception. The second forbids damaging any item in the cafeteria, under penalty of punishment, and the third prevents any employee from leaving during working hours. Then, she takes everyone inside and introduces the customer, who is already complaining about the delay, and orders them to start immediately. One of the girls can't take it and screams in fear, but the manager tells her to shut up and apologizes to the customer, saying she will handle the situation. 2 men appear, grab the girl, and forcibly take her away. Soon after, the staff begins serving a banquet, and the customer devours everything quickly. The red-haired girl almost vomits at the disgusting food but tries to hold herself together. Then, the customer asks them to wipe his mouth. The girl panics and begs Shenmue for help, but he simply says that she was the one chosen, so there's no reason for him to help. With no other choice, she does as she's told, and the customer is so satisfied that he gives her a tip. Upon seeing that she received money, her attitude changes completely, and she becomes happy, just like the others, since it was a ghost coin. A green-haired girl comments that these coins are extremely rare and valuable, capable of even making entities go easy on someone. She mentions that a wealthy man spent a fortune to obtain just a few coins, and yet the girl just received one for free. The redhead starts to feel superior, thinking she made the right decision not to let Shenmue have that chance, believing he must be jealous. After finishing the meal, the customer asks them to clear the plate, and the girl eagerly goes to do it. But suddenly, someone trips her, and she falls, breaking the plate on the floor. The customer himself reveals that he was the one who did it, saying she was clumsy, and now must pay for the damage. The girl tries to argue that it was intentional, but the manager grabs her arm and reinforces that rules are rules. Frightened, she hands over her money, confirming she she will pay. Seeing this, Chen-mu thinks she was completely foolish, as she just threw away her last chance of survival. The girl still believes everything is resolved, but the manager calmly informs her that the price of the broken plate is 20 ghost coins. The red-haired girl says that's impossible, since outside that would be worth a fortune, but the manager makes it clear they don't care about human money at all, and begins thinking about how to punish her. The redhead trembles in fear, not wanting to die, while the customer starts laughing, saying that the terrified expressions of humans are amusing. Then he begins choosing who will serve him next. No one else wants to go, but he notices that Chen-mu isn't afraid, and decides to choose him. Without being intimidated, Chen-mu asks why he should be afraid, and the customer tells him to pick up the plate, promising to give him 10 ghost coins as a reward. One of the girls tries to stop him, saying he'll get hurt, but he tells her to relax, claiming he has his own methods. Then, he takes the money from the customer's hand and out of nowhere slaps the plate, knocking it down and shattering it on the floor, leaving everyone in shock. Right after that, he tells them to stop wasting time and move on to the next step. The red-haired girl starts laughing, saying that now his money won't be enough to cover the damage and that he's definitely going to die. The manager then reinforces that he damaged a cafeteria item and must either pay or die, but Chen-mu calmly asks for a moment and makes an unexpected request. He wants a portion of peanuts worth 10 ghost coins to eat right there. At first, no one understands, not even the manager, but he explains that according to the rules, anyone who consumes food on site becomes a customer, and customers cannot have their demands refused. With that, Chen-mu becomes a customer as well, and his demand is simple: not to pay any compensation. This puts the manager under immense pressure, and she even praises his intelligence, asking for his name. He introduces himself as Chen-mu, while the red-haired girl, furious, calls it cheating and demands that he be killed. The manager refuses, explaining that he merely used the rules to his advantage and found a way to pass the test. The redhead grows even more furious and says she also wants to order something, but the manager reminds her that she herself confirmed she had no money left, leaving her completely outraged. The manager then asks Chen-mu if he wants anything else, and he asks her to call the owner of the cafeteria, saying he wants to buy the place right then and there. The manager thinks he's joking, explaining that it would cost millions of ghost coins, but he shows the money he has, and even offers a portion as a tip. Upon seeing around 30,000 ghost coins, the manager is shocked, saying that amount equals 2 years of her salary. The red-haired girl, still angry, asks why he didn't help her, but Chen-mu bluntly replies that he's neither her friend nor her relative, so he has no reason to pay for her mistakes. The manager interrupts the argument and says she will call the boss immediately, while the red-haired girl, desperate, starts begging Chen-mu for help, saying she doesn't want to die. Even so, the manager, with a cruel smile, grabs her by the leg and drags her away. Shortly after, the customer approaches Chen-mu and asks him not to take things seriously, saying he was a bit drunk, but Chen-mu tells him to leave immediately, and the man runs off without a second thought. Then Chen-mu asks the other two girls to sit down. They are still confused, saying they were in the middle of a supernatural mission, and everything suddenly changed. At that moment, the manager returns with the boss, who arrives with an intimidating aura and asks if he's the one who wants to buy the midnight cafeteria. Chen-mu confirms it, and the boss comments that he has a good eye. Despite the recent drop in revenue, the place still has a great location and a lot of potential. Chen-mu agrees, remembering that in his past life, that cafeteria started off weak but later became one of the largest hotels in the supernatural world. That's why he needs to secure it before anyone else. Meanwhile, the boss internally thinks he has finally found someone to take over that mess. The boss then states the price is high, asking for 7 million ghost coins. The manager even whispers that it's excessive, and when the boss sees Chen-mu's reaction, he starts to worry he asked for too much and suggests negotiating. But to everyone's surprise, Chen-mu says there's no need to negotiate and offers 8 million to close the deal immediately. This leaves both of them completely shocked and delighted at the same time. The boss asks if he's serious, and Chen-mu confirms it, but sets one condition: all employees must remain, and the boss cannot take anyone away. The boss agrees immediately, since he already wanted to leave and didn't care about the employees, especially since it would free him from paying their overdue wages. When they ask when he intends to pay, Chen-mu says it will be that very day, preferring to pay upfront. With a snap of his fingers, a massive pile of coins appears before them. The boss is overjoyed and quickly presents the contract, saying that once it's signed, the cafeteria will officially belong to him. As soon as Chen-mu signs it, a powerful aura emerges, but the boss explains that it's simply the power of the rules ensuring ownership. After that, Chen-mu feels the cafeteria forming a connection with him, similar to his spatial ring, and realizes that he is now the one who defines the rules of that place. The former boss is satisfied for having sold it for 8 million and freeing himself from everything, knowing that in the future, that amount could be worth even more. The two shake hands, both believing they got the better deal. After the former owner leaves, Chen-mu immediately starts acting as the new proprietor. He decides to change the rules and declares that the supernatural mission will end at 12:30 a.m., allowing the two girls to leave safely. They feel extremely relieved. Right after that, Chen-mu asks the manager to gather all the employees within 10 minutes. Once everyone is present, he formally introduces himself, saying his name is Chen-mu and that the former boss sold the cafeteria, including all of them along with it. Then, Chen-mu makes it clear that from that moment on, he is the new authority in that place. Even so, the employees react without much hope, saying it doesn't matter who the owner is, since they always end up being treated like pack mules anyway. But Chen-mu responds that he knows the former boss owed them about half a year's worth of wages, and assures them that things will be different with him. He announces that he will pay all the overdue salaries, and that the person responsible for handling the payments will be Manager Lee, which immediately lifts everyone's spirits. He further emphasizes that as long as they continue working for him, their salaries will be paid on time every month from now on. This completely changes the atmosphere, and everyone starts celebrating. Some even say they can finally get married, beginning to idolize Chen-mu as if he were a savior. Meanwhile, Chen-mu feels satisfied, realizing that he managed to win their loyalty with relatively little effort. After that, the employees bid farewell to the former boss, wishing him a good journey, and the place finally becomes entirely his. Even so, he reflects that, despite obtaining the midnight cafeteria, his current strength is still very limited, at the level of a mere ghost soldier, and that if he encounters stronger entities, he could easily die. Because of that, he understands that he urgently needs survival equipment. Out on the street, a taxi stops in front of him, which he finds strange, since it wasn't common to see cars at that hour. Even so, he gets in and says he wants to go to Wangjiang residence. However, the driver isn't human, it's literally a skeleton. Suddenly, the car starts accelerating at an absurd speed, and Chen-mu notices that, besides the excessive velocity, there's a faint smell of blood inside. Looking more closely, he spots a bloody hand on the door, and realizes he has entered another supernatural scenario, known as the spectral taxi. Based on his past experience, Chen-mu remembers that in the supernatural apocalypse, there are three major threats. The first are fixed scenarios like the midnight cafeteria, where the chosen must survive and complete missions. The second are ghosts disguised as humans, who lure victims into traps. The third is the most dangerous, because people don't even realize they've entered a supernatural scenario, and when they do, it's usually already too late. Even so, he remains calm, as he remembers the rules of the spectral taxi. If the passenger has enough ghost coins to pay the fare, they can leave safely. Otherwise, they must jump out of the car and escape before it accelerates again, or they will end up becoming food for the entity. Still, Chen-mu sees potential in it, since this type of taxi is extremely fast and also offers protection from other entities, while the passenger is inside. In fact, he already starts thinking of a way to take that car for himself. Soon, they arrive at the destination, and the driver says the fare is 10,000 ghost coins. Chen-mu finds the amount absurd, but the skeleton threatens him, saying that if he doesn't pay, he will show no mercy. Even so, Chen-mu mocks him, questioning how he can even drive without having eyes. The driver loses patience and tries to attack him, but Chen-mu grabs his arm and says he never claimed he wouldn't pay. He then tosses the money onto the seat and provokes the driver, asking if he dares to take it. The skeleton is surprised to see that the boy actually has that many coins. At that moment, Chen-mu explains that he knows the rules well. The passenger can leave safely after paying the fare, but the driver tried to cheat by blocking the taximeter to hide the real price. With that exposed, it becomes clear that the true fare was only 10 ghost coins. With no way out, the driver tells Chen-mu to leave, but he decides to continue the conversation. Showing even more money, he asks if the skeleton wouldn't be interested in earning more. The driver, now intrigued, says he would accept without hesitation, so Chen-mu makes his offer. If he agrees to work for him, he will receive 20,000 ghost coins immediately, plus the same amount every month. The condition is simple: he must become his personal driver and respond whenever he is called. The skeleton is stunned, since he works all day to earn far less than that, and upon seeing the money being summoned right in front of him, he immediately accepts. He introduces himself as Wang Qishi, and from that moment on, he officially becomes Chen-mu's personal driver. To finalize things, Chen-mu asks him to sign a contract, making everything official, since starting the next day he will be under his command as his personal driver. The skeleton then offers a cell phone, explaining that Chen-mu can contact him anytime through it, guaranteeing that he will appear within his field of vision in up to 5 minutes. Meanwhile, the skeleton himself thinks that with someone so generous, he must serve him well to not lose this opportunity. Then, Chen-mu arranges for him to pick him up at the same place at 10 in the morning the next day, and the skeleton agrees without hesitation. The next morning, Chen-mu reflects that the supernatural apocalypse hadn't been going on for long, yet supernatural scenarios were appearing more and more frequently. Nowadays, ordinary people avoided these places as much as possible, and would never enter them willingly. That's exactly why he decides to take full advantage of this opportunity to reach the peak of his life and become someone unbeatable. Even so, he recognizes that with his current strength, he cannot choose scenarios that require brute force to conquer. Thinking about it, he remembers a specific place, the Mist Museum, which was located nearby. The owner of the museum, Duke William, possessed the level of a ghost general and had several powerful subordinates at the ghost soldier level. In addition, he guarded a supreme treasure of the same level, the heavy armor of death, which granted immunity immunity against most damage from entities when equipped. However, obtaining that item was not simple. It wasn't enough to complete missions. The Duke had to hand it over willingly. According to Chenmu's memories from his past life, Duke William had been facing financial difficulties for a long time, and despite his glamorous appearance, he was desperately in need of money. Coincidentally, ghost coins were exactly what Chenmu had in abundance. At that moment, someone rings the doorbell, and when he opens it, he finds Wang Qishi standing there. Chenmu comments that the skeleton is quite punctual, and Wang Qishi replies that it's basic conduct for a personal driver. To make things even better, he brought breakfast for the protagonist, and even opens the car door for him, already thinking about the possible bonus he might receive. Inside the car, Chenmu asks if he knows of any shopping center where he could buy a gift for an entity. Wang Qishi replies that, as a boss, he should look for a high-end shopping mall, and Chenmu confirms that's exactly what he wants. Then, the skeleton mentions a decaying mall on the outskirts of the city, known for selling luxury goods, and asks if he would like to go there. Chenmu agrees immediately, and Wang Qishi starts the car and begins driving at high speed. During the ride, Chenmu is impressed by how proactive he is, concluding that money really does move mountains. Soon, they arrive at their destination, the famous decaying mall. Chenmu tells Wang Qishi to keep an eye on the car while he goes shopping, saying he'll be back quickly. However, Wang Qishi starts thinking that his boss was extremely cautious. Outside the spectral taxi, he would at most be a ghost soldier, and if something happened, he wouldn't be able to help much. On the other hand, if he stayed with the car, he could rescue his boss with an invincibility bonus, making him practically untouchable regardless of the enemy. Meanwhile, Chenmu enters the mall and begins walking through it. Even though it's summer, the temperature inside is close to freezing, making it clear that this is a supernatural scenario. As he observes his surroundings, he finds it strange that there are so many bloody hands spread across the ceiling. At that moment, a woman appears to greet him, welcoming him and asking what he would like to buy. Chenmu asks if this is really the decaying mall, and the woman confirms it, adding that there's no point trying to escape, because once he consumes something inside, he will be able to leave safely. She also warns him that if he wants to survive, he should consume something as quickly as possible. Even so, Chenmu sees through the trap and tells her not to try that kind of trick on him, explaining that if he's not mistaken, he can leave safely even without consuming anything. The woman is clearly surprised to hear that, not understanding how he knows such information. Chenmu then explains that he has seen this kind of situation many times before. The rules say that by consuming something, a person can leave the mall, but that's only a half-truth. Most people who enter for the first time panic and buy anything quickly in an attempt to leave, but without enough ghost coins, they break the rules and end up being devoured alive. In reality, the solution is simple. Since the rules do not forbid leaving without consuming anything, he could just walk out right now, and no one would be able to stop him. This knowledge visibly frightens the woman, and she admits that many people have already fallen into that trap. Then she says that since he figured out the exit, he can leave immediately. However, to her surprise, Chenmu asks why he would leave, since he came there precisely to make purchases. The woman becomes irritated, thinking he's mocking her, but Chenmu simply asks to be taken to the most luxurious counter in the mall. She then asks if he has a death wish, since even the cheapest items cost thousands of ghost coins, doubting that he could afford it. However, when he shows his money, her attitude changes completely. Immediately, she offers to take him to the 6th floor, explaining that it houses luxury items worthy of nobles. Without hesitation, Chenmu throws 20,000 coins to her as a tip, saying he's in a hurry and just wants her to show the way. Upon arriving at the floor, she explains that it contains the finest brands in the supernatural world. At that moment, Chenmu thinks that to impress Duke William, he needs to choose something worthy. So, he decides to go to a wine cellar, remembering that nobles usually value such items, and recalling that the Duke was a collector of high-quality red wines. Soon, another woman approaches to assist him, asking what kind of wine he would like to buy. Deep down, however, she hopes he doesn't have enough money, so she can devour that fool once and for all. But Chenmu ends up asking for 100 bottles of the most expensive red wine they have, also demanding the most luxurious packaging possible. The attendant starts smiling inwardly, thinking he's a complete idiot, since no one could possibly afford all that. After organizing all the bottles, she informs him that the total comes to 23 million, making it clear that if he cannot pay, his head will be used as collateral. Even so, Chenmu is not intimidated and tells her not to try to scare him, as he can pay that amount without any problem. The woman insists that she wants 23 million in ghost coins, but he shoots back, asking what exactly she thinks he is handing over. When she looks more closely, she nearly has a breakdown upon seeing the absurd amount of money in front of her. After checking everything, she explains that a transaction of that level requires the presence of the manager. Chenmu, already impatient, tells her to call her as quickly as possible. The employee then informs the manager, saying there's a customer who just bought 100 bottles of high-quality red wine at once. The manager of the decaying mall, Sun Qian, initially thinks it must be a mistake, since no human should have that much money. However, the employee assures her that everything has been verified, and that there are at least 20 million coins on the table. When Sun Qian goes to check personally, her eyes nearly pop out at the sight of such a fortune. Experienced and sharp, she quickly quickly composes herself and prepares to meet the customer, curious to see this magnate. As she approaches Chen Mu, she apologizes for the wait and asks for his name, and he replies that his surname is simply Chen. The manager then informs him that he has already spent 20 million and has therefore become the first gold-tier customer of the decaying mall. Even so, Chen Mu refuses the membership card, explaining that he hasn't finished shopping yet, which surprises even the manager. Then, Chen Mu stands up and says that those wine bottles were just the beginning. Sun Qian asks what else he needs, and he requests the most expensive jewelry in the store, nearly making the manager faint. She then presents a crystal necklace valued at 1 million ghost coins, one of the most expensive items in the mall. Chen Mu tells her to wrap it up, thinking it would be perfect as a gift for the Duchess. Right after that, when he looks at the watches on display, he decides to take all of them as well. Sun Qian informs him that the watches total 5 million ghost coins, and asks him to wait while everything is packaged. Meanwhile, Chen Mu reflects that the goods there are truly high-end, and that the place would certainly become a frequent consumption spot for entities in the future. He even begins to consider whether it might be better to just buy the entire mall outright. With that in mind, he asks whether the person in charge of the place is present, as he wants to know how much they would sell the mall for. The manager is completely surprised, unable to believe that he wants to become her boss, but explains that the leader is on a business trip and that she does not have the authority to make that decision. Even so, she offers to notify him as soon as he returns, and Chen Mu agrees, since he has no other option. Taking advantage of the situation, Sun Qian says she can arrange a supreme black gold card for him, and Chen Mu asks what privileges it would offer. She explains that with this card he could change the rules of the decaying mall however he wished, essentially having the same power as the boss within that setting. In addition, he could request the place to be cleared out whenever he wanted to visit, ensuring the best possible experience. Hearing this, Chen Mu asks her to prepare the card, and also requests 50 shopping cards, each with a limit of 5,000 ghost coins. The manager then hands over the supreme black gold card and even offers the 50 cards as a gift. As a gesture of gratitude, Chen Mu thanks her and activates his spatial ring, storing everything inside, which leaves Sun Qian impressed to see someone so young possessing such a rare item. He then says that is enough for today, as he still has other matters to take care of. All the employees bid him farewell respectfully, thanking him for the visit of the first supreme black gold VIP customer. Back in the car, after telling everything to the skull, Wang Qishi is completely astonished to learn that he has already reached that level, something that would normally require spending tens of millions. During the drive, Wang Qishi asks where they should go, but Chen Mu tells him not to rush and to hold a small red box. He explains that it is just a gift and hopes he will like it. When he opens it, Wang Qishi finds a Denton zombie watch inside and becomes extremely emotional, to the point of crying even without having eyes, saying that it is far too valuable a gift. Chen Mu tells him to keep it and simply do a good job, as there will be even more rewards in the future. Hearing this, Wang Qishi remembers how his former bosses only exploited him and treated him like a mere beast of burden, while Boss Chen is completely different, generous and fair. Moved, he declares that from that moment on, he will be the most loyal servant of all. Even so, Chen Mu tells him to calm down and asks him to take him to the Mist Museum. Without wasting time, the two set off at high speed. Along the way, Chen Mu thinks that he has already prepared everything in advance, and that this time, he must obtain the heavy armor of death, no matter the cost. When they arrive at the museum, Chen Mu tells Wang Qishi to find a nearby place to rest, saying he will call him when he is done. As he approaches the entrance, he notices that there are already 4 other people waiting there. A blonde man asks Chen Mu if he also received the mission notification, and another immediately tries to recruit him into their group, saying that with more people, their chances of survival would be higher. Even so, Chen Mu simply walks past them, making it clear he has no interest whatsoever. He thinks that in the apocalypse, betrayal and disappointment are common, and trusting anyone is practically asking to die. The men become irritated by his attitude, saying he is too full of himself and that acting that way will only make him die faster. Meanwhile, a woman shows fear of the mission, but a chubby mustached man tries to reassure her, saying he managed to obtain some extremely rare ghost coins, and that with them, the two of them would certainly survive. He even thinks to himself that to get those 10 coins, he had to spend more than 8 million. The woman then becomes completely dependent on him, saying he is amazing and begging him not to abandon her. The fat man replies that he will not leave her, as long as she is obedient, and even promises that after the mission, he will divorce and marry her. Seeing this scene, Chen Mu is somewhat surprised, finding it curious how someone like that managed to obtain ghost coins. At that moment, the fat man notices his gaze and asks irritably if he has never seen someone so rich before. Before the situation can escalate, the door of the place opens, welcoming them to the Museum of Mist, where the family of the Ghost General, Duke William, lives in isolation. As soon as they enter, everyone begins to feel the pressure of the surrounding mist. A mysterious voice invites them to enjoy the banquet prepared by the Duke. And when one of the men knocks on the door, butler Ron appears, allowing the guests to enter. The two men are completely shocked to see an entity for the first time, while the woman asks the fat man, called Hai, whether that monster will devour them once they go inside. Even so, Hai tries to appear confident, saying there is no reason to be afraid, since it is merely an insignificant servant. On the other hand, Ron observes the group and thinks they are just like the previous ones, uncultured and penniless. However, he notices that someone there is different, and asks Chen-mu why he has not entered yet. Chen-mu calmly replies, recognizing that he is Duke William's butler, and Ron confirms it, asking him to proceed to the main hall. Even so, Chen-mu says he has a gift to deliver first. Seeing this, the butler is surprised to notice that he possesses a spatial ring. Chen-mu explains that this visit is somewhat of an intrusion, and that he would like to offer the gift as an apology. The butler finds this interesting, realizing that at last someone understands the basic etiquette of the place. When the gift is opened, Ron is completely astonished to see that it is a lowly ghost watch, valued at 300,000 ghost coins. Surprised, he asks whether it is really for him and not for the Duke, as it is far too expensive for a mere butler. However, Chen-mu makes it clear that it is a gift made especially for him, acknowledging his loyalty after so many years of serving the Duke. The butler, far from being naive, accepts the gift immediately, and says that although he is only a butler, he holds a certain level of authority in the place. Because of that, he guarantees that as long as he is around, Chen-mu will be able to leave the museum without suffering any harm. Internally, Chen-mu celebrates, realizing that he spent just over 100,000 to obtain something equivalent to a protective charm, making the investment extremely worthwhile. As they walk through the place, Ron asks whether the people who entered earlier were his friends, and if he wanted any special treatment for them. Chen-mu replies that he doesn't even know them, so the butler can do as he pleases. Ron understands the message and says there is still some time before the banquet begins, but before that there will be a game, instructing Chen-mu to go to the main hall and rest. Meanwhile, the other four are still in shock, and the fat man cannot understand how that boy managed to get so close to the butler in such a short time. Ron serves tea to Chen-mu, who thanks him, while the others begin to consider ways to bring him into their group, thinking that even if he had no abilities, he could at least serve as a shield. Soon after, the butler claps his hands and announces that the banquet is still being prepared and that, to pass the time, the Duke has organized a game of hide-and-seek. He then explains the rules. The game will last 2 hours, and during that time, no one is allowed to leave the first floor. Any violation will result in immediate death. Next, he says that once the game starts, guards will patrol the hall as hunters, and anyone found will be executed on the spot. Finally, he explains that everything that does not move, aside from the walls and the floor, is part of the Duke's exhibition, and touching those items will also result in immediate punishment. After explaining the rules, Ron announces that the game is about to begin, and wishes everyone good luck. At that very moment, the timer starts. The blonde girl feels the environment grow even colder and panics, but Hai tells her to get a grip and quickly find a hiding place. One of the men points out that they cannot use the furniture to hide since it is part of the exhibition, while another falls into despair, saying it is a death trap. Meanwhile, Chen-mu calmly analyzes the rules, realizing that the exit is probably hidden within them. Since he has already secured his protection, he decides to use the situation to improve his survival skills. Soon, several entities begin to appear throughout the place, starting the hunt. The blonde girl falls into complete panic, but Hai loses his patience and slaps her, telling her to stay quiet. At that moment, one of the entities approaches her dangerously, while on the other side, another creature appears and finds the two. Without hesitation, Hai reveals his true nature and pushes the woman toward the entity to buy time, fleeing immediately afterward. However, something unexpected happens. The entity stops right in front of the woman and does not attack her. Confused, she starts to wonder why she hasn't been killed yet. Meanwhile, another entity is already cornering the other two participants. The green-haired man tells the other to stall the creature while he circles around for a surprise attack. Even terrified, the blonde man tries to hold the entity back, but it calls him an idiot and says his friend disappeared long ago. The blonde is outraged when he realizes Zhao Shang has simply betrayed him. At the same time, Zhao Shang runs away, thinking that the guy is an idiot and that he has survived this long precisely because he is ungrateful and willing to betray his own companions. Meanwhile, Chen-mu continues analyzing the rules of the place. He notices that there are exhibition items that cannot be touched and things that do not move. He finally puts everything together and concludes that the hidden way out is likely tied to this. He decides to use an entity to test his theory. When the creature approaches, threatening to kill him if he doesn't run, Chen-mu calmly replies that if it touches him, it will be the one to die. The entity is startled and confused, so he explains. The rules state that anyone who touches an exhibition item will be executed immediately, and anything that does not move is considered part of the exhibition. In other words, as long as he remains still, he will be treated as one of those items. He even provokes it, asking whether it dares to touch him, which completely intimidates the entity. Realizing he has deciphered the rules, it simply gives up and goes after someone else. Chen-mu lets out a relieved sigh and comments that his his theory was correct. But right after that, someone taps his shoulder, startling him. It is another butler, informing him that his tea is ready. For a moment he thinks he was wrong about how to survive, but the butler explains that since the place is cold and damp, another staff member became concerned and sent tea to warm him up. Shenmue thanks him, and the butler adds that if he gets bored, he can leave the game at any time. With a snap of his fingers, a sofa appears out of nowhere, but Shenmue declines, saying he doesn't need it since he has already found the solution. Meanwhile, a blonde woman who has been watching everything is impressed by his ability. She thinks that if she stays close to him, she will definitely survive, so she runs up to Shenmue, throws herself at him, and starts acting clingy, saying she is very scared and asking if he can protect her. However, he cuts her off immediately, saying that instead of flattering him, she should go back to the fat man she was with before. Even so, she insists, saying she would do anything for protection, but Shenmue advises her to find a safe place to hide as quickly as possible, since he is not interested and does not want to stain his clothes with her blood. At that moment, Zhao Sang watches everything with great anger. He complains that he had to go through so much, working hard and even betraying his own companion just to barely survive, while Shenmue is calmly standing there with women throwing themselves at him. Then he approaches and tries to act friendly, saying that Shenmue is amazing and asking if they can team up. Shenmue responds by asking why he doesn't join the woman instead, since the two of them could keep each other warm. Feeling slighted, Zhao Sang calls the woman over to his side, and realizing she won't get help from Shenmue, she ends up agreeing. But at that moment, someone approaches, and Zhao Sang notices that a guard is coming. He grabs the woman and the two of them run off. Meanwhile, Shenmue watches and thinks that she is very naive since she was betrayed once and still continues to trust others so easily. Meanwhile, the butler is pleased with his new watch, as it is an absurd luxury item. An employee approaches and informs him that the tea has already been delivered. The butler asks if he told the guards that Mr. Chen was the guest of honor, but the employee replies that Shenmue has already found the way out. This surprises the butler, since the game had barely started. He then realizes he underestimated the boy, thinking he was only being generous to make the game easier, when in fact, he had more than enough skill and intelligence. Now the butler decides he wants to get closer to him and makes a point of treating him even better. He then orders them to bring fruit and even a sofa to Shenmue, and the employee does exactly that. At that moment, Shenmue asks how much time is left in the game, and learns that only 10 minutes remain. He realizes that this is the most dangerous moment, since entities tend to attack when players relax, thinking they have already survived. When one entity tries to go after him, another stops it, reminding it that he is the butler's VIP, so they decide to go after the other players to fulfill their quota. Soon after, an announcement informs that only 10 minutes remain until the end of the game. Meanwhile, Zhao Shang boasts that he managed to protect the girl and suggests that the two of them enjoy the moment. She almost gives in, but suddenly an entity appears behind them. Without hesitation, he pushes the woman and runs away, leaving her in shock. Desperate, she begs not to be killed, but the entity grabs her by the neck and says it only needs her life. As time passes, only 6 minutes remain. In the end, the survivors sit down, commenting that the game is finally over. The fat man complains that it was not fair, since while everyone else was struggling, Shenmue spent the entire time calmly drinking tea. Zhao Shang also cannot understand how he managed to remain so comfortable. As for Shenmue, he simply notes that 2 people died, resulting in a 50% survival rate, which is fairly normal for this type of game. At that moment, the butler appears, announcing that the hide-and-seek game has ended. He says that the Duke has already prepared a banquet, and asks everyone to follow him to the second floor. As he walks, Shenmue thinks that he has finally made it this far, and that if he manages to gain the Duke's favor, he might secure the heavy armor of death. When they arrive at the dining table, the butler explains the banquet rules. The first is to never disrespect Duke William and his wife, and the second is that everyone must eat everything that is served, otherwise there will be severe punishment. He also indicates that Shenmue's seat is to the Duke's right. With everyone seated, the banquet finally begins. The Duke and his wife appear, greeting everyone, and take their seats. He snaps his fingers, ordering the dishes to be brought in. However, when the food arrives, it is clear that it does not look like something humans would eat, and even the fat man finds it strange. Duke William then says that he prepared it to demonstrate his sincerity. At that moment, Shenmue asks to speak despite the boldness, saying that he prepared some gifts and would like to present them before the banquet begins. Duke William is surprised, thinking that among all the people who have come here, someone who truly understands how things work has finally appeared. He even notices that Shenmue is wearing a spatial ring. With a clap of his hands, the protagonist summons 2 boxes, one for the Duke and one for the Duchess. At first, the Duke thinks the box looks ordinary, and that it must not be anything valuable, since he still sees visitors like him as ignorant. But the moment he opens it, he is completely astonished to see that it is a limited edition zombie Dayton. At the same time, the Duchess is also surprised when she opens her gift and finds a crystal necklace from the decaying mall, exactly what she always wanted but never dared to buy. Excited, Duke William praises Shenmue's thoughtfulness and asks Emily to do the honors by personally calmly serving him. She claps her hands and orders a special fruitcake, and soon a waiter appears, serving a perfect dish to the protagonist. Shenmue thanks them for their hospitality, and the Duke replies that he is pleased to see him satisfied. Seeing this, the fat man Hai begins to feel confident, realizing too late that he could have used gifts to curry favor. He thinks his ghost coins are very valuable, and that if he offers them, he will surely receive even more attention. So he stands up and announces that he has also prepared a gift for Duke William, for Emily, and for the Duchess. Curious, the Duke tells him to show it immediately. Without thinking much, Hai takes out his spiritual coins from his shoes, which carry a terrible smell. Instantly, Duke William becomes extremely furious and asks if that is some kind of insult. The butler quickly intervenes and drags the fat man away. Confused, Hai still wonders why he was treated that way, even though he offered something he considered valuable. But the Duke makes it clear that the watch he received earlier was worth millions of ghost coins, and that such filthy money would not even be good enough to clean his shoes. Hearing this, Hai is left in shock, trying to understand how Shenmue could have so much wealth. Meanwhile, Zhao Shang, observing everything, realizes that the protagonist is absurdly rich and begins to think that if he could steal that money, he could become a king in this apocalypse. Duke William then apologizes for what happened, but Shenmue says it is no problem. Emily asks whether the man sitting next to him is his friend and if he needs any special treatment, but Shenmue replies that he does not know him. The Duke understands the situation and orders Zhao Shang to eat the food immediately. This leaves him completely shocked, since just one word from Shenmue could have helped him, yet he chose to ignore him. At that moment, Zhao Shang already begins to plan his revenge and to kill the protagonist as soon as he leaves that place. While Duke William and the Duchess chat cheerfully with Shenmue, Zhao Shang is forced to eat that horrible food filled with hatred. After finishing, he nearly vomits, while the protagonist is already completely in sync with the two. Before they part, the Duke comments that the man seemed to harbor a lot of hostility toward him and asks whether Shenmue would like him to deal with it. However, he replies that it is not necessary, as he already has his own men waiting for him. Duke William becomes even more impressed upon learning that Shenmue has subordinates and decides to show him a treasure to further strengthen their relationship. He says he possesses an item of Ghost General level and asks if Shenmue has time to evaluate it. Shenmue immediately agrees, saying it would be an honor, while thinking that the moment he had been waiting for has finally arrived. Cutting to outside the Mist Museum mansion, Zhao Shang is thrown out. He feels sick from the food and has a severe stomachache. Thinking quickly, he decides he needs to find medicine as soon as possible. Luckily, there is a taxi parked right in front, so he gets in and asks to be taken to the nearest hospital as fast as possible. Meanwhile, he remarks that after recovering, he will return to deal with Shenmue. The driver then asks which brat he is talking about, mentioning Shenmue by name. This startles Zhao Shang, making him suspect that the driver is also an entity. The man, named Qishi, looks at him threateningly and asks him to answer first. Without thinking much, Zhao Shang confirms that he wants to kill Shenmue, saying he has many ghost coins and suggesting they split the money if the entity helps him. Hearing this, Qishi starts laughing and asks if he really intends to go against his own boss. He then reveals that he will not let someone like him escape. Suddenly, the car accelerates violently, and Zhao Shang realizes he is dealing with someone far beyond what he imagined. Desperate, he tries to get out, but the doors are locked. With a cruel smile, Qishi says there is no chance left for him, and that next time, he should be careful about who he chooses to provoke. The scene then returns to Duke William's office. Upon entering, Shenmue notices that the Duke's wine cellar is completely empty and comments that for someone who appreciates wine, it is quite a sad situation. The Duke explains that although he earned his title in the War of the Supernatural World, he now lives in complete poverty. Hearing this, Shenmue says that, out of respect for the Duke's character, he prepared some red wines as a simple gift. He then fills the entire cellar with the most expensive wines in that world. This leaves Duke William completely astonished. After tasting it, he declares the wine excellent, magnificent in fact, and realizes it is worth millions of ghost coins. Overcome with emotion, the Duke begins to cry and declares that from that moment on, he insists on having Shenmue as his best friend. By coincidence, he also says he has a very special gift to offer in return. Duke William then finally shows the armor Shenmue had long desired. He explains that it is a treasure from his Half-Life collection, something that stood by his side on the battlefield, facing life and death situations. He says that by wearing that armor, Shenmue would become immune to any damage caused by beings below the Ghost King level, and most importantly, it can also resist the power of rules, although it has a cooldown of up to 1 month. Hearing this, Shenmue asks whether, by using the armor, he could avoid punishment even when violating the rules of supernatural scenarios. Duke William confirms that this is exactly the case. He then says that Shenmue has already given him so many gifts that there is no other way to repay him, and therefore asks him to accept the armor as a gesture of gratitude. Even so, Shenmue tries to refuse, saying he cannot accept something so valuable so easily, but Duke William insists, stating that if he does not accept it, it would dishonor his intentions. Realizing he has little choice, Shenmue accepts, saying that in the face of such generosity, he can only receive it with gratitude. The moment he touches the armor, his hand is enveloped by a heavy dark aura. Duke William tells him not to be alarmed, explaining that the armor will remain hidden within his body for a time, and will automatically appear to protect him if danger arises. Feeling it, Shenmue realizes that an extremely powerful supernatural aura now constantly surrounds his body. Even though he sincerely thanks him for the kindness, Shenmue makes it clear that the armor is far too valuable to simply accept for free. So he decides to offer 10 million ghost coins to Duke William, saying it should be considered a purchase. When the money appears before him, the Duke is completely stunned by the absurd amount and begins to see Shenmue as someone extremely noble. In response, Duke William gives him his personal medallion, saying it symbolizes their friendship. He explains that if Shenmue faces any disaster, he can use the medallion to summon him, and he will appear immediately at his side. Shenmue accepts the item, thinking that he did not expect such a useful extra reward, since now, if he encounters something that even money cannot solve, he can call upon the Duke to handle the situation. After that, the two sit down again, and Shenmue says that, to be honest, he intends to acquire more supernatural scenarios to stabilize his business. However, he admits that he still does not know where to start, and then asks whether Duke William has any recommendations on the matter. The Duke comments that, in his opinion, owning a school is a scenario with great growth potential. However, he explains that, at their core, the needs of entities are not so different from those of humans, since a good school is an indispensable resource for high-level entities. Shenmue agrees, understanding that the children of these entities are also like humans, and that they would fight to the end for a spot in a good school district. The Duke confirms that he is right, and explains that if the school he buys is good enough, countless high-level entities will try to curry favor with him, just to secure a place for their children. When that happens, any favor Shenmue needs will be easy to obtain. Shenmue then thanks the Duke for his advice, but remarks that it is already late, and he does not want to disturb his or the madam's rest. Duke William says the road is too long and asks if he would like to stay the night, but Shenmue declines, explaining that he still has urgent matters to deal with. At the gate of the Mist Museum mansion, Emily comes to see him off, commenting that the fog in the mountains is very dense and asking him to be careful on his way back, while Shenmue simply thanks her. At that moment, he shows her his black card and explains that if she and the Duke want to buy anything, they can just use that card. Emily is completely charmed, as it is the black card from the Decadent Mall. Shenmue comments that the limit is not very high, but hopes that will not be a problem, and Emily is so touched by his kindness that she nearly bursts into tears. After he leaves, Emily is already completely smitten, thinking that he is handsome, rich, and increasingly charming. When Shenmue gets to the car, Chushi informs him that he has already dealt with the thug as ordered, and Shenmue gets in, saying he did an excellent job. The skeleton asks where they are going, and Shenmue replies that their destination is the midnight cafeteria. When they arrive, the place is crowded, and the manager is arguing with a man, explaining that they do not accept his purchase offer. The man reacts irritably, stomping his foot and complaining that the Mashuruka cafeteria had the audacity to compete for customers with his 5-star hotel. At that moment, Shenmue appears and asks what is going on, and the manager is relieved to see that the boss has returned. Meanwhile, the man asks if he is the new owner of the midnight cafeteria. The manager then explains in a low voice that the man is the owner of the neighboring 5-star hotel and has been trying to buy the cafeteria for a ridiculously low price. The man, in turn, provokes Shenmue, saying that a weak human should not meddle in business with entities and implying that he has a death wish. Shenmue is not intimidated and begins to mock him, saying that he has little skill and a lot of arrogance. Even so, the man persists and offers 30,000 ghost coins for the cafeteria, a value so low that even the manager is shocked by his audacity. The employees gather, already irritated, asking if he is looking for a fight. The man then reveals that he is at ghost boss level, claiming that low-level entities stand no chance against him. He explains that he had not tried to take over before because the previous owner was also at that level, but now that the owner is a human, he intends to crush him without hesitation. Even so, Shenmue remains calm and says he will count to 3 for him to leave, or else he will collect a debt, which makes the man laugh, finding it absurd for a human to say such a thing. Suddenly, the entity launches an attack, but at that exact moment, Shenmue's armor activates automatically and blocks the blow, sending the enemy flying. Shenmue mocks him even more, saying that someone at Ghost Boss level should not show off like that. The man is shocked, unable to understand how the attack was blocked, so he stands up and claims it must be because of a powerful defensive item, demanding that Shenmue fight fairly without armor. Shenmue retorts that it is absurd for an entity to expect a human to fight unarmed and still talk about fairness. Then he summons his medallion and explains that it does not count as armor, which leaves the man completely terrified upon recognizing it as an exclusive item of General Ghost William. Unable to understand how a human obtains such a thing, he panics, while Shenmue continues to taunt him, saying he does not know how to use it very well, and asking if he can help. Faced with this, the man immediately kneels, apologizing and saying he will leave as quickly as possible, even going so far as to wipe the floor with his own body as a sign of submission. One of the employees is impressed to see that the boss not only withstood a ghost boss boss attack, but also possesses such a rare item. While another comments that of all the humans he has ever met, Chenmu is the best. Manager Lee then asks if he is really going to let the man leave like that, since he might try to harm them later. Chenmu asks the man to wait and inquires whether he is truly the owner of the hotel, showing interest. The man understands the situation immediately and offers to transfer the hotel to Chenmu's name for a very low price, asking only to be spared. Even so, Chenmu decides not to take advantage of him and states that he will pay the market price, showing a different attitude than expected. After signing the contract, he asks manager Lee to turn the hotel into a branch of the cafeteria. Then, he sits down and asks how the day's balance turned out, wanting to know if they had losses again, but manager Lee replies that they actually made a profit of 200,000 ghost coins. Chenmu is extremely surprised by the amount, especially considering that only one day has passed. The manager explains that this result is thanks to the new dishes created by the head chef, highlighting one in particular, an appetizer made of sliced lung with spectral honey, which perfectly matches the tastes of the entities. She says that as soon as the dish was launched, it sold out immediately. Chenmu begins to think that this dish might become the cafeteria's signature in the future, but he finds it strange that something so good appeared so quickly. When he asks about it, the chef explains that she had actually created the dish a long time ago, but never had the chance to present it, since the former boss was a tyrant who exploited the employees and did not pay salaries, so she ended up hiding her best recipe. Now, seeing that Chenmu is completely different, she finally decides to use all her talent to help the cafeteria grow and generate even more profit. Chenmu comments that if the number of customers keeps increasing like that, soon no one will have time to rest. However, Lee and the other employee exchange strange looks, because in reality, entities simply do not rest and work 24 hours a day. Realizing this, Chenmu decides to take action and asks manager Lee to gather all the employees, as he wants to hold a meeting. When everyone gathers, Chenmu thanks them for their excellent work and announces that he will implement a new benefits system. The employees begin whispering among themselves, confused by the situation, since they are so used to being exploited that they cannot understand how receiving benefits and salaries could still generate profit for the boss. Then, Chenmu hands each of them a decadent mall card and explains that this will be their new benefit. Everyone is shocked to see that each card already contains 5,000 ghost coins, and he adds that every month he will deposit another 1,000 coins. This leaves the employees completely stunned, and some even begin to cry with emotion. Manager Lee comments that he is too kind to the employees, but Chenmu asks her to wait, saying he is not finished yet. He then announces that starting the next day, the workday will be reduced by 20 hours per day, leaving 4 hours for rest. In practice, they go from being exploited without pay to being exploited with pay, and even having a small amount of rest time. Even so, the employees are in total shock, completely speechless, and Chenmu even begins to think that perhaps he gave too little rest time, when in fact it is the opposite, since none of them had ever had rest before. Soon after, everyone starts celebrating, saying they will be even more loyal to him from now on. Meanwhile, Chenmu is already thinking about the future, imagining that when his businesses grow, he might even give weekends off, and perhaps implement 8-hour shifts without overtime, all in order to build his own supernatural empire and maximize his profits in the long run. One of the employees, completely overwhelmed with emotion, says that Chenmu is the reincarnation of the living Yama, and soon everyone begins calling him that. Chenmu does not like the nickname very much, and asks them to continue calling him simply boss. After that, he tells everyone to get back to work, and reflects on how that sense of control, where a simple gesture can decide everything, is extremely fascinating. Looking around, he notices that the environment is completely clean and organized, showing that the reward system is already working. Then, he asks manager Lee to prepare a dormitory for him, as he has decided to spend the night there. The manager, very excited, says she will take him to a special dormitory, but upon arriving, she reveals that it is just the regular staff dormitory. Chenmu quickly says goodbye and shuts the door in her face without a second thought, making it clear that he had no ulterior intentions. The manager is disappointed, as she had imagined something else, but Chenmu, already lying on the bed, thinks that he has already given her enough rest, and that it would not make sense to let her stay there without working. The next day, the scene shifts to Chenmu's school, which in the future will be invaded by entities and become one of the most famous, known as the Dark Knight Academy. The school grows rapidly, and in less than half a year, becomes an elite institution across more than 10 neighboring cities, making Chenmu realize that he needs to seize the opportunity to buy it as soon as possible. At that moment, a fat man appears scolding someone for being outside the classroom, but upon realizing it is Chenmu, he completely changes his attitude. It is Principal Jang, who quickly realizes that he has gotten himself into a complicated situation, since he intended to get closer to the entities through Chenmu, but ended up being rude to him. Afraid of the consequences, the principal changes his tone, apologizes, and even asks if there is anything that could be improved at the school. Chenmu replies that he has no suggestions and asks if he is late, but the principal says no, and even suggests changing the schedule rules. Chenmu refuses the idea and continues on his way, noticing how quickly the principal's attitude changes change just to please him. In class 1 of the 3rd year, Chenmu finally enters, and the teacher comments that he is late, but without showing any irritation. The students find this strange, since someone who arrives late would normally be reprimanded, and they begin to suspect that Chenmu is someone very important, perhaps someone capable of buying supernatural scenarios. Even so, some wonder why someone so powerful would still attend school. At that moment, Chenmu senses a strange aura and realizes that the supernatural invasion has begun. The environment grows colder, the sky suddenly darkens, and the mission system appears, announcing the start of the fatal exam. The message states that the exam will begin shortly, and everyone who received a ticket must remain for the test, while those who did not must flee immediately, including the teacher. The selected students are left in shock, not knowing what to do. One of the boys tries to calm the others, saying that Chenmu is like a god to them, and that if they follow him, they will survive. At that moment, a blonde girl approaches desperately, offering anything in exchange for help passing the exam, which makes Chenmu think ironically that when someone is poor, no one cares, but when they become rich, even strangers come to them. Soon after, the system announces the rules. The exam lasts 2 hours, no one is allowed to leave the classroom, and there is an entity hidden among them. To pass, they must kill this entity, and the exam ends when fewer than half of the participants remain alive. If the entity is not found in time, the exam fails and half of the participants will be killed at random. In addition, each desk has a utility knife capable of injuring entities, releasing black smoke when that happens, but it also makes the entity become aggressive. The only hint is that the entities have 4 limbs like humans and are difficult to distinguish, usually remaining motionless until they are discovered. Faced with this, everyone panics, realizing the severity of the situation and wondering whether they will really be able to find the entity before it is too late. At that moment, Chenmu begins to reflect that those rules are practically identical to those from his past life, and he understands that the true purpose of the exam is not just survival, but to test people's humanity. In his view, there are only 2 ways to pass: either use others as tests, sacrificing people to identify mistakes, or pinpoint the entity with precision and eliminate it in a single strike. Meanwhile, one of the students suggests that everyone cut their own hands, since if smoke comes out, it would prove who the entity is. However, another quickly rebuts, reminding them that injuring the entity would cause it to attack everyone immediately. This idea makes the atmosphere even more tense, causing everyone to grow suspicious of one another. In the midst of the panic, one of the boys even pulls out a knife against a girl, accusing her of standing too still and therefore being the disguised entity. Just as he is about to attack her, Chenmu intervenes and grabs his arm, explaining that the entity would not attack first, and that as long as no one acts impulsively, they are still safe. He then recalls that in his past life, this same mission ended in a massacre where everyone killed each other, and in the end, the entity was never even found. That is why, this time, he decides that he must complete the mission properly. As time passes, a student comments that the classroom next door is in chaos, and that they apparently still have not found the entity. After an hour, a girl notes that half the time has already passed, increasing the pressure even more. At that moment, Chenmu begins to analyze the situation calmly, remembering that entities normally do not move on their own and have 4 limbs, but something does not add up, since everyone in the room has changed positions at some point. Observing the environment more closely, he fixes his gaze on a specific spot and begins to understand the pattern behind the mission. Shortly after, the loudspeaker announces that Class 3 has failed the exam and that half of the survivors have been eliminated, throwing everyone into complete despair. Under pressure, one of the students asks Chenmu what they should do, and he calmly states that he has already found the entity. This immediately causes confusion, as some think he is accusing Wang Fang, especially since he had just defended her earlier. Another student reinforces the suspicion against her, while the girl panics, trying to justify herself. Without wasting time, Chenmu grabs the knife and drives it directly into the desk beside her. Immediately, black smoke begins to rise, revealing that the entity had been there all along. Everyone is shocked to realize that he identified it correctly. Soon after, the system announces that Chenmu from Class 1 has found the exam target and passed, also confirming that all members of the classroom survived. Relief spreads through the room, and everyone begins celebrating, praising him for saving their lives. Curious, they ask how he managed to figure out that the entity was a desk, and Chenmu explains that everything was hidden in the rules, but in a misleading way. The rule only stated that the entity had 4 limbs like a human, but never said it was human. Moreover, the most important hint was that the entity did not move on its own. By observing the room, he realized that everyone had changed positions at some point, including desks and chairs that had been moved around, except for that specific desk, which remained perfectly aligned from the beginning, even with Wang Fang sitting beside it. From that, he concluded that the desk could only be the disguised entity. After resolving the problem, Chenmu instructs everyone to leave immediately, explaining that the school has been invaded by entities and that there is no point in staying. Without hesitation, the students run home. As he watches the scene, Chenmu thinks it is unfortunate that the other classes were not as lucky, but understands that this is the true nature of the supernatural apocalypse, where not everyone survives. Soon after, he heads to to the principal's office, where the principal comments that he is probably the only human who has managed to pass the exam so far, yet still questions his audacity in entering with such confidence. Shenmue replies that he sees no problem, since he came there to negotiate. The principal becomes irritated, stating that Shenmue does not have the status for that, and that intelligence does not grant the right to be insolent, reinforcing that humans are merely food for entities. Even so, Shenmue remains calm and summons a large amount of ghost coins, offering them as a simple gesture of courtesy. Upon seeing tens of thousands of coins, the principal completely changes his demeanor, formally introducing himself and even mentioning that he has heard of Shenmue through other entities at the midnight cafeteria. He begins treating Shenmue with respect, recognizing not only his intelligence but also his wealth, and even offers a special tea he has kept for decades. Shenmue, in turn, decides to demonstrate even more of his capability and summons several rare wines using his spatial ring. The principal is completely astonished upon recognizing them as collectible wines from the decadent mall, but among them, he also notices the medallion of a ghost general, which intrigues him even more. Trying to play it off, Shenmue casually comments that he dropped a personal item, but the principal immediately understands that it is not something ordinary and begins to suspect that Shenmue has someone extremely powerful backing him. Even so, he composes himself and asks what the objective of the negotiation is. Without any preamble, Shenmue states that he wants to buy Dark Knight College for 100 million ghost coins, leaving the principal so shocked that he nearly spits in surprise. He questions whether it's a joke, but Shenmue confirms that he's completely serious. The principal then explains that the school's market value doesn't exceed 50 million, but Shenmue counters that this only makes the offer even better for him to accept. In his mind, he already foresees that once the apocalypse fully unfolds, noble entities will fiercely compete for spots for their children at that school, making the investment extremely profitable. Even so, the principal remains doubtful, saying that 100 million is an absurd amount and questioning whether he can actually pay it. Shenmue confidently replies that he may have many flaws, but a lack of money isn't one of them, and then summons the entire sum right in front of him. The principal admits the amount is more than enough, but still says he cannot sell the school, which surprises Shenmue. When questioned, he explains that he is only the internal principal, and that the college belongs to the school council, which deeply hates humans. He then reveals that there are two special rules. The first states that if a human wants to buy the college, they only need to pay 1/10 of the market value. This makes Shenmue suspicious, as it seems too good to be true. Finally, the principal reveals the second rule. The moment a human signs the purchase contract, they will be instantly erased, making it clear that this was actually a deadly trap. Shenmue then understands the whole situation. The first rule is used as bait to lure humans, while the second serves to eliminate the victim and keep all their money. The principal confirms that this is exactly how it works, and explains that this was why he didn't want to sell the place to him. Even so, Shenmue makes it clear that he doesn't care, and decides to buy it anyway, which irritates the principal, who asks if he didn't hear anything he just said, since he would be killed the moment he agreed. However, Shenmue remains completely calm, says it's not a problem at all, and asks them to bring the contract immediately. Seeing no other option, the principal brings the contract, and Shenmue signs it without hesitation. As soon as the deal is concluded, the principal comments that it's a pity to waste such a promising future like that. But at that exact moment, a scythe appears and moves in to execute Shenmue. However, his armor activates automatically and completely blocks the attack, protecting him 100%, leaving the principal utterly shocked. Shenmue then casually explains that it's nothing special, as he possesses a very powerful item, and on top of that, this item can even nullify the power of rules. Upon hearing this, the principal realizes something important, and remarks that in the entire supernatural world, there is only one armor capable of resisting the power of rules, and it belongs to Duke William. At that moment, he finally understands why Shenmue has that medallion. With everything clarified, Shenmue reminds him that he has already signed the contract, which means he is now the new owner of the Dark Knight College's school council. The principal confirms this, and asks him to assume his position, but Shenmue refuses, explaining that he's not good with administration, and that the principal himself can continue in the role. This leaves the principal extremely relieved and grateful, promising that he won't disappoint him. Right after, Shenmue asks for all teachers and staff to be notified, as he wants a meeting in 10 minutes. Shortly afterward, in the courtyard of Dark Knight College, everyone is already gathered, talking among themselves about the new owner, and trying to understand whether it's really true. The principal then asks for silence, and officially announces the arrival of the new owner, asking for a round of applause. When Shenmue is introduced, everyone is completely shocked, as he is just a human, and some are stunned remembering that they had taken part in plans to kill humans. At that moment, many begin to worry, thinking he might hold grudges and take revenge now that he is in charge. Shenmue in turn takes the microphone and explains that he gathered everyone there for 3 reasons, soon revealing that all 3 are related to improvements. He announces that, starting that day, everyone's salary will be doubled, leaving everyone extremely impressed and excited, even going so far as to call him a living llama. But he continues, saying that's not all. Everyone will also have 4 hours of rest per day, in addition to being able to to eat for free at the midnight cafeteria. With that, excitement spreads throughout the place, and everyone begins celebrating enthusiastically, with even exaggerated comments of admiration appearing. Even so, Shenmue makes it clear that there is one requirement. They must turn that school into the best in its field within just 1 month. Motivated by the benefits, everyone becomes determined to achieve this goal. With that, Shenmue concludes by saying he has nothing more to add and leaves the rest to the principal. The principal then announces that a dinner has been prepared for everyone and dismisses the staff to head to the midnight cafeteria. While most are excited, some remain skeptical, thinking they're celebrating too early and that the food probably won't be anything special, perhaps just human leftovers. Others agree, saying that nothing comes for free, while some argue that even if the food is bad, the benefits already make up for it. Despite the doubts, when they arrive at the cafeteria, everyone is completely surprised to find a true banquet, with high-quality dishes such as lung with spectral honey, sweet and sour spectral fish, and spirit-reviving meat. Faced with this, even the most skeptical are left speechless, while others take the opportunity to mock them. One of the staff members, excited, takes photos and posts them on social media, impressed to have a boss as generous as Shenmue. Soon, many people begin commenting on the post, including names like Yin Zhou, who questions whether their boss has gone crazy, and another person called Ben Bo Ba, who asks if the school is still hiring, claiming he can work up to 26 hours a day. Meanwhile, a few guys sitting on the sidewalk follow everything on their phones, and one of them comments that he's jealous of the benefits, wishing he had something like that. On the other hand, another guy scolds the group, saying they're daydreaming, since no one with such good conditions would go around showing it off to just anyone, and also reminding them that they haven't even finished Spectral Elementary School yet. But at that exact moment, Shenmue appears at the end of the street, catching their attention. One of the guys comments that he looks like just an easy-to-fool human, while another suggests offering him the loan package they usually run. Meanwhile, Shenmue keeps walking, thinking that now is the perfect time to buy a luxury mansion and finally enjoy life. That's when the guys approach him and try to pitch a microloan, but Shenmue flatly refuses, making it clear he doesn't need it. The man insists, saying their offer is extremely advantageous, explaining that the monthly interest on 100,000 would be only 100, and asks if Shenmue wants to reconsider. However, Shenmue fully understands the scam and explains that the 100,000 they lend is in human currency, while the amount they later demand is in ghost coins, which already makes the debt absurd. He also adds that in case of late payment, the person is forcibly executed, making it clear that this is their real scheme. The three are shocked to hear this, and begin wondering how that boy knows everything. One of them comments that Shenmue's aura doesn't seem ordinary, and that it's better to leave before things get troublesome. They are already about to leave when Shenmue asks them to wait a moment, noting that the three of them have Ghost Commander level strength, which would be perfect for serving as security for the school and helping maintain order in the cafeteria. One of the men immediately warns him that even if he's strong, he's still just a human. However, Shenmue clarifies that they misunderstood and explains that he was only observing their physique, then directly asks if they would be interested in working for him. Even so, one of them responds with disdain, saying he would rather starve than work for a human. Hearing this, Shenmue simply comments that it's a pity since he had prepared a monthly salary of 10,000 ghost coins, along with benefits such as food and housing included. He then says he won't force anyone and turns to leave, but this immediately makes one of the men react, telling him to stop and asking whether the payment would be in human or ghost currency. Shenmue calmly replies that he would never stoop to using tricks like that, making it clear that the payment is legitimate. As soon as they understand this, the three completely change their attitude and bow on the spot, accepting the job without hesitation. Next, Shenmue hands them 3 cards, explaining that they are employee IDs from Dark Knight College, and that with them, they will be able to eat banquets for free in the cafeteria. The three take the cards, thank him enthusiastically, and run off happily. Meanwhile, Shenmue thinks that with this, ordinary entities will no longer cause trouble at either the school or the cafeteria. Soon after, he calls the driver and asks to be picked up at the school gate. About 10 minutes later, the driver arrives, and once inside the car, Shenmue says he wants to go to the Shanshui residential complex. When they arrive, the skull accompanying him explains that the place is protected by the power of rules and that the car cannot pass through the barrier. Even so, Shenmue finds it interesting, since regardless of someone's level, everyone must follow strict rules to enter, making the place extremely safe. He then gets out of the car and approaches the purple barrier, trying to understand how to activate that supernatural setting. At that moment, a woman appears and asks if he would like to see some houses. What catches Shenmue's attention is that she is human, something unexpected in that place. She asks again if he wants to buy a house, and he confirms that he does. Then she hands him a business card, and Shenmue notices something impressive. The card can pass through the rule barrier. As soon as he takes it, the barrier opens automatically, and he understands that it works like an access key. However, the moment he enters, the woman simply leaves. Shenmue finds it strange and asks if she isn't going to accompany him, but she immediately refuses, saying she has been trapped there for a long time, and that if he hadn't appeared, she would never have been able to leave. She also tells him to pray that someone else else shows up to take his place before she leaves for good. Looking back, Chen Mu realizes he was deceived by an illusion created by the rule barrier, since the real appearance of the complex is completely different from what he saw before. Walking through the place, he notices that everything is in ruins, making it difficult even to find the sales office. At that moment, an entity appears, calling him a fool and saying he won't find a way out, and that it would be better to accept the situation. However, Chen Mu shows no concern and replies that it misunderstood him, since he was more interested in assessing the condition of the complex and calculating how long it would take to renovate everything after buying the entire place. The entity is surprised by his reaction, finding it strange that someone wouldn't despair after falling into a supernatural scenario, and would instead think about buying the place. It then asks whether Chen Mu has any idea how much that complex costs, and says the price is 50 million ghost coins. Chen Mu laughs upon hearing this, asking if that's really all it costs, and then confidently states that he'll buy everything. With a snap of his fingers, an enormous amount of ghost coins appears, leaving the entity completely stunned, unable to understand how a human could possess so much wealth. The entity, whose name is Wu Wan, begins to think that since this kid is so rich, he needs to take the opportunity to profit as much as possible. To him, earning little is the same as taking a loss. Meanwhile, Chen Mu says that if everything is settled, he can go ahead and prepare the contract for signing. However, Wu Wan asks him to wait, explaining that the previous price was only a test to measure his capital. Now that he knows Chen Mu truly has both the interest and the money, he decides to reveal the real price, stating that the complex actually costs 1 billion ghost coins. Hearing this, Chen Mu realizes he's being taken for a fool and decides to play along. He says money isn't a problem, but asks if he can invite 2 friends to check out the new property. Wu Wan agrees without hesitation, saying there's no issue at all. Then, he hands over another business card and explains that when Chen Mu speaks the invitation words, the cards will automatically fly to the hands of the people he's thinking of, allowing them to be brought there. Chen Mu then uses the card and says his own name, declaring that the owner of the Shanshui complex would gift the entire place to him, while also inviting his friends to visit his new home immediately. As soon as he finishes speaking, the cards fly off on their own toward the people he had in mind. Seeing this, Wu Wan is furious, unable to believe that the kid actually thinks he would receive the entire complex for free. Even so, Chen Mu remains calm and says his friends will arrive shortly. Wu Wan then tries to regain control of the situation, and states that the 50 million would only serve as a down payment toward the total of 1 billion. But Chen Mu cuts him off, telling him not to rush, since he's clearly being hasty, and reminds him that, following proper procedure, he should first present the property before talking about payment. Wu Wan realizes he's right, and decides to take him on a tour. As they walk, Wu Wan asks who the friends he invited are, and whether they are as rich as he is. Chen Mu casually replies that they're about average, just wealthy people with nothing much to do, and says he'll see for himself when they arrive. Hearing this, Wu Wan secretly laughs, thinking he might be able to squeeze even more money out of them. When they reach their destination, Wu Wan presents the main mansion, saying that it is the highlight of the Shanshui complex, and that once the deposit is paid, Chen Mu can move in immediately. However, Chen Mu makes it clear that he'll only close the deal when his friends arrive, and even reinforces that if the price remains at 1 billion, he'll pay without complaint. Confident, Wu Wan agrees to wait. After some time, he announces that the guests have arrived, and goes to receive them at the gate. The scene then shifts to the sales office of the complex, where the one who appears is manager Sun from the Decadent Shop. Upon seeing her, Wu Wan is surprised, since the Decadent Shop is one of the greatest supernatural forces in the city, and he begins to wonder why she is there. Sun then explains that Chen Mu is a supreme black gold VIP client of the establishment, and that they have specially prepared a 1,000-year spectral jade as a congratulatory gift for his new residence. This leaves Wu Wan completely shocked, as he realizes that Chen Mu is no ordinary person, but a high-level VIP client. Immediately, he begins to worry that he may have messed with someone he shouldn't have. Trying to fix the situation, he approaches Chen Mu and says that since he is close to manager Sun, he is willing to offer a 50% discount on the agreed price. Even so, Chen Mu doesn't rush and says that his second friend has yet to arrive. At that exact moment, a massive aura appears in the area, frightening Wu Wan, who thinks it might be a ghost general. Soon after, the one who appears is none other than Duke William, asking if he arrived late. His presence leaves Wu Wan completely stunned. He can't believe that this kid is also connected to someone of the Duke's level. William comments that he came immediately after receiving Chen Mu's message, and Chen Mu replies that he arrived just in time to watch a good show. Next, Chen Mu introduces Wu Wan as the one in charge of the Shanshui complex. Wu Wan, trying to compose himself, says that he has heard much about the Duke and that it is an honor to meet him. William then asks if he is the one giving the complex to his brother, commenting that it would be a great display of generosity. Under pressure, Wu Wan tries to deny it, saying there has been a misunderstanding and that he never intended to give the place away for free. At that moment, Chen Mu questions why he didn't raise any objections when he received the invitation earlier. With no way out, Wu Wan tries to smooth things over, saying he misspoke and that in fact, he would give the entire entire complex along with the parking spaces. Even so, Chen-mu continues to press him, saying that doesn't seem right, since Wu Wan himself had set the price at 1 billion ghost coins. Wu Wan then completely changes his tone, saying it was all just a joke, and in an attempt to avoid bigger trouble, he hands over the contract, now voluntarily offering 47 courtyards and parking spaces as a sign of respect. Deep down, Wu Wan knows he can't afford to offend either Chen-mu or Duke William, especially the Duke, and understands that refusing could cost him dearly. With that in mind, Chen-mu accepts the kind gesture and signs the contract. He then reflects that, with the Midnight Hotel, the college, and now the Shanshui complex, his strength has already reached the level of an intermediate ghost captain. Wu Wan then declares that the complex now belongs to Chen-mu and takes his leave, saying he won't disturb the reunion between him and his friend. Chen-mu simply agrees and says they'll meet again in the future. After Wu Wan leaves, William comments that he suffered a major loss by handing over the complex like that and likely won't let it go easily, asking if he should take care of the problem. But Chen-mu refuses, saying he already has his own plans to deal with it. Shortly after, Wu Wan reappears in a rage, complaining that William might be able to protect him now, but not forever, and swears he'll get his revenge. In the middle of his outburst, a car nearly runs him over, passing dangerously close. Enraged, Wu Wan starts shouting, asking if the driver is blind and demanding immediate compensation, saying he wouldn't settle for less than 100,000 ghost coins. At that moment, two men appear, saying they'll help him resolve the issue, which leaves Wu Wan confused, unsure who sent them. One of them introduces himself as Ji and comments that the car is spacious, suggesting Wu Wan get in to sort things out. But before he can react, the two of them drag him inside by force, saying that in there, he'll need to check whether his own brain is still functioning properly after trying to scam their boss. Meanwhile, inside the Shanshui complex, Ji sends a message to Chen-mu, informing him that everything has already been taken care of. Chen-mu is surprised by their efficiency and begins planning his next steps, thinking that out of the 47 courtyards he acquired, he will keep only 10 for public use, while the remaining 37 will be used as strategic gifts to build relationships with powerful ghosts in the future. Soon after, Chen-mu offers one of the courtyards to Duke William as a token of gratitude for his visit, but William says it doesn't seem appropriate. Even so, Chen-mu insists, explaining that given their relationship, there's no need to refuse. He also reflects that with a ghost general like William protecting his territory, any ill-intentioned entity would think twice before causing trouble. Then, he thanks manager Sun for coming, but she replies that she should be the one thanking him, since he is a supreme client. Taking the opportunity, Chen-mu mentions that he intends to renovate all the structures in the area and states that all necessary materials will be purchased from the decadent shop, asking Sun to prepare a detailed proposal in advance. Upon hearing this, she mentally calculates that if all areas are renovated, the cost could easily reach hundreds of millions of ghost coins, which excites her about the potential profit, and she assures him she'll handle everything. William then observes that although the courtyards were obtained for free, the renovation would cost a fortune, and asks whether Chen-mu plans to sell part of them. However, Chen-mu explains that he doesn't, since the financial return wouldn't be as valuable as his real plan, to use those properties to create an elite circle aimed exclusively at high-level ghosts. William comments that it might be difficult to convince such entities to trust the place, but Chen-mu clarifies that his plan goes beyond that, as he also intends to develop the surrounding areas and, at the right moment, ask the Duke for help in promoting him within that circle. He believes that newly promoted noble ghosts wouldn't miss the chance to connect with higher levels of the hierarchy. The scene then shifts to the office, where an employee informs him that manager Sun has arrived. Chen-mu asks to let her in, and she presents the renovation plan she prepared, asking him to review it and suggest any adjustments. Chen-mu thanks her and praises the work, but she says it was nothing special, and mentions that there are still some important points to discuss. He then asks if she's referring to the advance payment, but Sun explains that the issue is something else. They still haven't found a suitable construction team. Since the project is large and involves his property, they don't want to risk hiring random workers who might cause problems. Chen-mu says that if that's the case, he can postpone the work for a few days, but the secretary suggests an alternative, saying they could use the cafeteria staff to help, since they are trustworthy. However, Chen-mu doesn't like the idea much, as it would affect the cafeteria's operation. The secretary then proposes using the employees' 4 hours of rest to assist with the renovation. Sun finds this excessive, noting that in their shop, work runs continuously 24 hours a day. Even so, Chen-mu responds that he doesn't intend to go back on his word regarding the employees' rest time. The secretary insists that it wouldn't be a problem, explaining that in the ghost world, overtime is practically non-existent, so it wouldn't be unusual. Faced with this, Chen-mu agrees to the idea but imposes a clear condition. Those 4 hours must be considered overtime and paid at triple the rate. The secretary tries to refuse again, saying she wouldn't feel comfortable with that, but Chen-mu makes it clear that this is his rule, and without it, he won't allow the plan to proceed that way. She understands the message and agrees to handle everything immediately. As she leaves, Sun observes the situation and is impressed by his attitude, becoming even more interested in the way he manages arranges things. Shenmue then asks her to arrange all the materials listed in the plan, and she assures him that she will do so as soon as possible. The scene shifts once again, now to the cafeteria, where the secretary gathers all the staff and explains that the Shanshui complex is short on manpower, so Shenmue needs them to use part of their rest time to help with the renovation. At first, some of them get excited, saying they'll finally have a chance to repay everything he has done for them. However, the secretary asks them to calm down and explains that everyone who participates will receive triple pay for the overtime hours. Upon hearing this, the reaction is completely unexpected. Everyone panics, questioning why he would do something like that, as if it were a punishment, and they begin to worry that he might go bankrupt for being too generous. One of them asks how the boss treats everyone there, and another replies that it's so good he can't even explain it, to the point that some start getting emotional. The situation escalates to the point where everyone begins saying they should work overtime without receiving anything, as a way to make up for it. In the middle of this, one of the employees interrupts and suggests a solution, explaining that first of all, they need to adjust the situation, saying that no one should register their work in the complex on the payroll, so they can avoid receiving overtime pay. The idea quickly gains support, and even the secretary is moved by their loyalty. With that, everyone decides to head to the Shanshui complex immediately, running off excitedly and saying they love working overtime, even without pay. Changing scenes, Shenmue arrives at the location and thinks that money managed to turn a job that would take several days into something completed in just a few hours. He thanks everyone for their effort, but the employees happily reply that it was nothing special. However, one of them casually mentions that they worked extra hours completely for free to ensure the quality. Before he can continue, G quickly covers the man's mouth and asks what the hell he's talking about, since the boss cannot find out about that. Even so, Shenmue hears it and asks what he meant by unpaid overtime, growing furious inside as he realizes someone is disobeying his rules. The three are stunned and start crying, begging for forgiveness. Shenmue makes it clear that he knows they volunteered on their own, but reinforces that rules are rules and must be strictly followed. Without wasting time, he calls Manager Lee and orders that from now on, time cards must be checked rigorously, including absences and overtime records. He also says she must compensate everyone for those overtime hours. This time, he will let it slide, but warns that if it happens again, there will be no excuses for punishment. After that, Ji informs him that his room has already been fully renovated, and when Shenmue enters, he finds an extremely luxurious environment. Ji explains that, according to the schedule, the full decoration of the villa will be completed in 2 days. Even so, Shenmue gives another warning, saying that dedication to work is welcome, but his rules cannot be broken. Ji assures him there will be no issues going forward. Noticing that it's already late, Jay suggests that the boss should rest. Shenmue laughs, finding it amusing how clever he is, and Jay emphasizes that the boss's health is more important than any salary. The scene then shifts to the office of the Midnight Cafe. Manager Lee reports that she has already distributed overtime pay to the employees who secretly worked the previous day. Upon seeing the list, Shenmue is impressed, as the minimum recorded was 14 hours, while others reached 16. Even so, he asks if there is anything wrong with that report. At that moment, Lee starts to stutter, and Shenmue slams the table, questioning whether she is trying to deceive him. He makes it clear that if someone hides something from him, it could become a habit among everyone. Frightened, she bows and apologizes. Still, Shenmue says that is not what he wants to hear. Manager Lee then explains that the clock-in and clock-out times are correct, but there is one detail: the employees are arriving much earlier and leaving much later than usual. Hearing this, Shenmue considers the situation a form of rebellion and begins to worry about the employees, especially since they do not have health insurance. Confused, Manager Lee asks what that is. He then reflects that hospitals capable of treating ghosts are extremely rare. From this, an idea emerges. If he were to buy a hospital specialized in treating ghosts, he might be able to control something equivalent to the lifeline of everyone in the city. Thinking about it, Shenmue asks what happens when ghosts get injured. The manager explains that for minor issues they buy medicine, but in serious cases they simply wait to die. Not understanding, he asks why, and she explains that the cure rate in those hospitals is very low. Moreover, in Wangjiang City, there are no specialized hospitals, so ghosts have to travel to a neighboring city. There, the costs are extremely high, and most of the time they end up losing both their lives and all their wealth. This shocks Shenmue, who concludes that he needs to buy a hospital as soon as possible. Manager Lee believes he is simply worried about the employees, but he senses that something is off. In his memory, there used to be a famous ghost hospital in Wangjiang, and now he begins to wonder what happened to it. He confirms once again with the manager whether there truly is no hospital there, and she reaffirms that there isn't, as there has been no notification of a new scenario appearing. Then he asks if she understands how these strange new scenarios work, and she replies that she does, asking if he intends to acquire one. Without hesitation, Shenmue asks her to arrange some ghosts to keep watch over an abandoned hospital in the southern suburbs, and to notify him immediately if a ghost hospital appears. She agrees at once and is impressed by his ability to predict such things. The scene then shifts to Shenmue Mu's driver, who points out the location and states that it is the Hospital of Fear. Mu tells him to simply wait outside, as usual. However, as soon as he enters, a new mission appears before him. The objective is clear. He must act as an in-house doctor at that hospital and successfully complete his internship. Upon realizing this, Mu finds it absurd, since the system is placing a layman in charge of treating ghosts. To him, this perfectly explains why the hospital has such a low cure rate and such a high mortality rate. Even so, he admits that the place has an extremely macabre atmosphere. Walking through the location, Mu observes that those bloody handprints seem to be a standard feature in strange scenarios. At that moment, a nurse appears and asks if he is the doctor. Smiling calmly, he confirms that he is. The nurse finds it curious that he shows no fear, and Mu comments that he is already getting used to it, even going as far as to say that she is quite attractive. She reacts with interest and asks him to follow her. As he walks with her, he thinks that after seeing so many grotesque ghosts, her appearance actually seems charming in comparison, and he attributes that kind of thought to the fact that he has been single for a long time. Upon arriving at the destination and opening the door, Mu notices a strong smell of blood. The nurse then introduces a man, explaining that he is the head doctor of the department, Director Tong, from the Great Iron Rod Hospital of the Ghost World. The doctor recognizes him as the new intern, and Mu formally introduces himself. Next, Director Tong hands him the operating room rules and asks him to read them carefully. The first rule states that the director has excellent medical skills, does not lie, and can always provide the perfect treatment plan, and must be obeyed without question. The second rule says that one cannot leave the operating room during duty. The third requires treating 5 patients and obtaining at least 3 positive reviews, otherwise the mission fails. The fourth explains that some patients are stable but demanding, and their needs must be handled patiently to avoid negative reviews, which makes Mu think about how to deal with such patients without upsetting them. The nurse asks him to sit for a while. He thanks her but questions the absence of patients. Director Tong replies that he should not be impatient, as there are fewer cases at night. However, right after saying this, a patient arrives with an injured arm. The director tells the patient to lie on the bed, and begins guiding Mu, saying that he must first use ghost flower oil with cotton to disinfect the wound, applying it gently and rotating 3 times to the left and 3 times to the right. After that, he praises the intern and says that bandaging is enough to complete the procedure. Even though he follows everything correctly, Mu finds the process strangely simple and feels that something is off. The patient quickly thanks him and says he is leaving. Mu suggests he rest a bit longer and return if needed, but the man simply runs off, leaving him confused. Shortly after, the system informs him that the first surgery received a score of 50, considered a failure, along with a negative review. Not understanding why, Mu begins to suspect the situation. The director tries to reassure him, saying there are still other chances, but he already senses that something may be wrong with the rules. Remembering that the director cannot lie, Mu decides to question him directly. He asks whether any question will be answered truthfully, and the director confirms he will not deceive any participating intern. Then Mu asks whether he truly possesses the exceptional medical skills he claims to have. In response, Director Tong admits that his skills are only average, and comments that he did not expect the flaw in the rules to be discovered so quickly. With this, Mu realizes the mission has become much more difficult, since he can no longer trust the director's instructions for future procedures. Now with only one failure allowed remaining, he begins to think of a solution. After analyzing the rules, he notices that he must treat 5 patients, but there is no specification of where these patients must come from. With this in mind, he takes out his phone and decides to contact someone. The scene then shifts to the school, where one of Mu's 3 guards comments that the boss has suddenly requested 3 patients who can give positive reviews. Bin is confused, wondering where they are supposed to find sick people, but Jay suggests that if there are no patients, they can create them themselves. At that moment, a girl passes by them, attracting attention with her beauty. While one of them gets distracted, G scolds him for behaving like that. Soon after, several men appear harassing the girl, creating the perfect opportunity. G notes that there are 3 men, an ideal number. Bin comments that they are harassing a girl in the middle of the night, but one of the attackers, with a scar on his face, shows no concern and makes vulgar remarks about her. Seeing this, G steps forward and says he has something special to offer. The man thinks he is being reasonable, but quickly realizes his mistake when G says he will send him straight to the world of the dead and punches him in the face. Within moments, all 3 attackers are on the ground, severely injured, with broken legs, faces, and ribs. The girl thanks them, calling them heroes of the school. Meanwhile, the 3 guards realize they now have exactly what they need: 3 patients. Still, Jed decides that sending all of them at once would be suspicious, so he plans to send one first, and the others later. Cutting to another scene, the three arrive at the hospital where Shenmue is carrying out his mission. When the van door opens, the men have cloths stuffed in their mouths to prevent them from screaming. Ji drags one of them out, but the man panics, saying he does not want to be treated at that hospital. Without patience, Ji threatens him and tells him to listen carefully, making it clear that if he does not comply, he will die. He explains that once inside, the man must find a doctor named Shenmue, be treated by him, and then give a good review. He also promises that if he does everything correctly, all the ghost coins will be his. Jie warns that he will be waiting outside and that any attempt to trick them will result in death. After that, he kicks the man into the hospital. The scene shifts again, and the man enters crying, asking to be treated by Dr. Shenmue. Seeing this, Shenmue thinks Ji's efficiency is not bad at all, since he managed to bring in a patient in less than an hour. Director Tong finds the situation strange, questioning why someone would insist on being treated by an intern, while Shenmue attributes it to the power of money. He then introduces himself as a resident doctor, and the patient becomes confused, thinking that someone capable of commanding high-level entities should be much more powerful. Still, he kneels before him, claiming he simply slipped and hit his face on the ground. Shenmue tells him to lie down, saying he will disinfect the wounds and then prescribe medicine to take home. The patient thanked him, saying it was an honor to be treated by him, while Director Tong was completely confused by the situation, unable to understand how a doctor could have fans. Shenmue completed the treatment quickly and discharged the man, who left extremely grateful, saying he had become like a second father to him. Shortly after, the system notification appeared, stating that the second procedure had received a score of 100 with a 5-star rating. This satisfied Shenmue, since he now only needed 2 more positive evaluations. At that moment, the other 2 men arrived, saying they had been run over, which made Director Tong even more suspicious of the situation, and even begin to suspect that something was wrong with Shenmue. Examining their injuries, Shenmue commented that they seemed more severe and decided to treat them first. However, upon taking a closer look, he recognized one of them and remembered that this was the man who had cut off his finger in a past life. Back then, the man had mocked him, telling him he didn't know his place, and questioning why he tried to act like a hero, also revealing that someone close to him had betrayed him in exchange for their own survival. Faced with this, Shenmue realized he finally had a chance for revenge. The blonde man, now in front of him, began trembling in fear upon noticing the doctor's terrifying expression. Without hesitation, Shenmue grabbed a defibrillator and asked if he was ready for treatment. The patient, confused, questioned the use of the device, since his problem was only a fractured rib. With a cold smile, Shenmue replied by asking if he was trying to teach him how to do his job. Without giving him time to respond, he delivered a direct electric shock, mockingly telling the patient to hold on, even as the voltage increased. The man, completely burned, could barely speak and said he was already healed. Even so, Shenmue continued, asking why he still seemed to be in pain, and delivered more shocks, increasing the intensity even further. The patient's friend, watching everything, was horrified, realizing that the doctor was being extremely brutal. After several discharges, the situation worsened to the point where the man's soul separated from his body. With complete calmness, Shenmue turned to the other man and stated that the patient's condition had been too severe and that he ultimately did not survive. Hearing this, the survivor panicked, realizing his friend would no longer be able to give a positive review. On top of that, he feared that if the men outside found out, he would also be in danger. Right at that moment, the guy got so desperate that he grabbed the defibrillator from Shenmue's hands and started trying to resuscitate his own boss. The scene was so moving that even the doctor was touched and almost cried, saying it was a true demonstration of brotherhood. But to everyone's surprise, the man actually came back to life. The doctor was amazed and claimed it could only be a true miracle. Meanwhile, the entity went weeping over to the blonde guy and said that Dr. Shen's positive review had worked. She also commented that he could even die afterward, but before that, he needed to rate the doctor immediately. Even though he was nearly unconscious, he gave a score of 100 and a 5-star rating for the 3rd surgery. This left the protagonist highly satisfied. On the other hand, the doctor couldn't understand who that fellow was and how he managed to get so many positive reviews so quickly, as if they were being handed out for free. Without wasting any time, Shenmue said it was time to treat the boy's leg. The entity replied that his leg was only a tiny bit broken, and that it probably wouldn't be necessary to use the defibrillator. However, Shenmue stated that everything depended solely on his behavior. Hearing this, the entity pushed his friend out of the bed and guaranteed he would cooperate 100%. As soon as he lay down, he said the doctor could treat him however he wanted, as long as he left him with one last breath of life, so he could leave a positive review afterward. Shenmue then commented that the fracture looked quite serious. Smiling, the entity agreed and said the pain was way too intense. Right after, Shenmue revealed that he wasn't that skilled in orthopedic surgery. The entity replied that this had nothing to do with him, and that it was entirely his own fault. After all, he shouldn't have broken his leg in a way that the doctor didn't know how to treat. Faced with that absurd logic, Shenmue just sighed and said it was fine, starting with the disinfection of the wound. While being treated, the entity commented that the doctor was truly miraculous, since his leg had even regained sensation. Shenmue, however, thought that the guy was cooperating so much that he was probably yet another actor sent by GA. After finishing, he informed him that that was all he could do for now. The entity was overjoyed and declared that he was finally cured. Nonetheless, Shenmue asked if he was really okay and if he didn't want to put a cast on his leg. The answer was negative. To prove he was doing great, the entity started doing several acrobatics right in front of him. As he was leaving, Shenmue asked if he really intended to abandon his fallen boss on the floor, but before he could get an answer, the system popped up, announcing that the fourth surgery had received a score of 100 and a 5-star rating. Switching scenes, the doctor commented that the first patient had been hired by him to act. Therefore, the other two definitely had a genuine fear of Shenmue. The protagonist then asked what Director Tong meant by that. The director replied that he had just one question and asked what that boy's original job was, since every entity that passed through there showed an enormous amount of respect for him. Shenmue replied that it was nothing major and that he was just an ordinary person who did some small business here and there. At that moment, a nurse arrived, accompanied by GA, who wanted to speak with Dr. Shenmue. The problem was that GA was carrying the exact entity that had given him a negative review. Without ceremony, he threw the guy onto the floor and explained that he had accidentally tripped and broken a few teeth, asking the doctor to take care of the treatment. The man started to cry and admitted he had made a mistake by leaving a negative review. Seeing this, Shenmue wondered why GA had gone so hard on him, thinking that people from the supernatural world truly didn't follow the old tradition of avoiding punches to the face. Shortly after, GA apologized to his boss and said it was his fault for exaggerating a bit. Shenmue replied that it was fine and asked him to wait outside. Before leaving, however, GA made sure to leave a very clear threat, warning that he would be waiting for the guy out there. Desperate, the man begged and said he would change the review that very instant. Thus, the system appeared again, informing that the first surgery had been altered to a score of 100 and a 5-star rating. Seeing this, Shenmue said that everything was settled now and that he could leave peacefully. The entity didn't need to hear it twice and ran off desperately to save his own life. The doctor commented that he had been working as a physician for many years, but it was the first time he had ever seen someone alter a review after it had been submitted. To him, it was becoming clearer and clearer that the boy was no ordinary merchant. A little later, another patient appeared complaining that his gums were swollen and hurting a lot. The doctor then told Shenmue that he had already worked too hard and that he could take over that surgery in his place. The protagonist asked if that would really be appropriate, but the doctor assured him it was. Besides, the rules didn't forbid him from performing the surgery instead of the intern. While the doctor worked, he asked Sao Li to give Shenmue a nice shoulder massage. Sometime later, the scene shifts again, and the doctor was already exhausted. He declared that the treatment was finally over and asked the patient to remember to leave a positive review for Shenmue. Right after, the system recorded the fifth surgery with a score of 100 and a 5-star rating. With that, Shenmue commented that he had finally completed that annoying mission. The doctor apologized for making him wait so long, but he replied that it was no problem and that he was already on his way out. However, the doctor asked him not to be in such a hurry. After all, he was the first intern to complete everything with a perfect score, and because of that, the hospital had prepared a special reward. The scene then shifts to the hospital director's office. Upon seeing that Shenmue had completed the mission with a perfect score, he realized that the name seemed familiar. After thinking for a moment, he remembered that this was the extremely wealthy human who had bought the Dark Knight Academy and the Shanshui condominium, one right after the other. Reaching this conclusion, the director began brainstorming ways to swindle the boy into buying his hospital. Since he didn't like wasting time, he decided he would meet with Shenmue in person as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Sao Li was handing Shenmue a Ghost Boss tier item called hallucinogenic spray. The doctor explained that the item released a mist capable of putting entities into an illusionary state. However, the effect lasted for only 1 hour, so it had to be used with great caution. At that moment, the director appeared on the stairs and as he observed Shenmue, thought that he looked exactly like the one in the photo. With that, he was certain that this was the famous super billionaire. Without wasting any time, he approached, praising the boy and saying he was extremely talented. Upon seeing him, Shenmue thought that this was precisely the person he had been hoping to meet. Even so, he hadn't imagined that the director would seek him out of his own free will. The director then commented that he had followed the entire treatment process, and that Shenmue truly possessed very refined techniques. Of course, that was a massive lie, but he kept a straight face as he spoke. Next, he explained that he considered a simple spray to be far too modest a reward for someone who had achieved a perfect score. Therefore, he had decided to prepare an extra prize especially for him. Behind all that cordiality, however, his true intention was to make Shenmue take over the absolute ticking time bomb that was this hospital. Right after, he pulled out a pen and said it was a token of his gratitude. The gesture left Sao Li completely stunned, as that was the director's exclusive gold pen. Aside from being extremely rare, it was considered a luxury item valued at over 100,000 100,000 ghost coins. Even so, Chen Mu found all that sudden kindness strange and realized there were certainly hidden motives behind the gift. Nevertheless, he thanked him politely and commented that the director was very generous to give him something so valuable. The director then decided to get straight to the point. He stated that Chen Mu possessed extraordinary talent and asked if he had any interest in investing in the medical sector. Hearing this, even the hospital staff were shocked. In their eyes, the director truly had a heart of stone, as he was trying to make the boy take over a hospital that did nothing but accumulate losses. Keeping his cool, the director finally revealed his goal and said he wanted to sell the terror hospital to Chen Mu. The protagonist then asked why anyone would want to sell a hospital that was apparently running so well. On the inside, though, he was satisfied, because it was finally an entity's turn to approach him to do business. The director replied that, to be honest, the hospital had been generating more expenses than profits lately. He explained that he had tried various ways to reverse the situation but had been unsuccessful. For that reason, he decided to put it up for sale. Chen Mu then asked how much he wanted for the hospital. While waiting for the answer, he reflected that the apocalypse had started only recently, and that ordinary entities didn't have enough money to pay for expensive surgeries. Because of this, it was only natural that the hospital was operating in the red. The director then replied that it wouldn't be such a high amount, just 800 million ghost coins. The sum left all the employees in complete shock, as it seemed easier to rob a bank than to come up with that kind of money. However, Chen Mu countered that the director wasn't being completely honest. He explained that when a supernatural realm goes bankrupt, its owner vanishes right along with it. Next, he asked if the director really intended to make him shoulder the entire loss just to save his own life, and be treated like a fool on top of it. Hearing this, the director broke into a cold sweat. He quickly stated that the price was entirely negotiable and asked what he thought of 500 million ghost coins. But his desperation only kept growing. Within moments, he dropped the offer to just 100 million. Even so, Chen Mu realized that this amount was still way above what the director actually expected to receive. So, he made his own counter-offer and proposed 70 million ghost coins. After hesitating for a few seconds, the director agreed immediately. He said that first he needed to see the ghost coins, and after that, the two of them could sign the bill of sale. Chen Mu snapped his fingers, announcing that the money was right there. Director Liu wanted to understand how Chen Mu had suddenly come up with 70 million. Chen Mu made it look so effortless. The nurse's eyes began to sparkle. Unexpectedly, Chen Mu started looking like a very handsome guy to her. At that moment, Chen Mu figured Director Liu needed to hurry up and grab the contract, so Director Liu handed it over, and it promptly dissolved into Chen Mu's hands. With that, he acquired the Terror Hospital. Consequently, his strength reached the Ghost Boss tier, and he unlocked an ability that allowed him to transform into an entity for 5 minutes, which was excellent for him. Chen Mu liked it a lot, and immediately began to unleash his power. Director Liu was thoroughly impressed by his strength. Chen Mu then offered to help Director Liu carry those ghost coins, but Director Liu was already prepared. He was quick-witted, grabbing a hospital bed and piling his cash right onto it. From that moment on, the employees were under Chen Mu's care, so Director Liu didn't want to break his balls anymore. He immediately took off, wishing prosperity and huge profits to Chen Mu. Meanwhile, Chen Mu was absolutely certain that Director Liu would regret this once he saw the hospital making a fortune. He then turned to his new employees, asking them to take him to the director's office. Tong, the bald guy, was blocked by Xia Li, who was all excited to lead Chen Mu herself, while Tong tried to convince her that it was perfectly fine for him to escort the boss. However, Chen Mu presumed that Tong would be a better option to stay on duty. Xia Li then informed him that since access throughout the hospital was somewhat restricted, they needed to go up to the 5th floor and then take the stairs down. That was going to be quite a cardio workout for Chen Mu. Tong, the weird bald guy, immediately started crying, wishing he had studied nursing instead, completely forgetting that he would need to be born again and actually be attractive. Next, the scene shifts to Xiaoli, showing the director's office to Chen Mu. It looked as though Lu Dayu had been prepared to sell the hospital for a very long time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left everything so clean in advance. Eventually, Chen Mu stumbled upon the medical manual, which also contained the list of hired doctors. Chen Mu opened it to see if he could find anyone familiar. The hired doctors had only a 10% success rate, which explained one of the reasons why the hospital was falling apart. That was until he found someone familiar. At that moment, Xiaoli approached. The wretched girl was incredibly nosy, wanting to know if he knew that intern doctor. Chen Mu didn't realize the guy was an intern, and Xiaoli informed him that he had joined just a few days ago. Chen Mu wanted to know where that guy was right now. Xiaoli mentioned that Director Liu had sent that intern doctor to guard the warehouse. Chen Mu got pissed upon hearing that, ordering Xiaoli to summon the guy immediately. She even trembled at his rage, running off like a desperate person. Sitting down, Chen Mu hadn't expected that the miracle doctor, who would become world famous by the end of the apocalypse, had been sent to guard a warehouse. The apocalypse had only just begun, so nobody would believe that a sloppy, crazy ghost possessed such incredible skills. Either way, that guy was working for Chen Mu now, and Xiaoli soon arrived with him. The intern doctor's name was No Cure. Xiaoli introduced him to the new owner and director of the hospital. No Cure quickly rushed to shake his boss's hand. Chen Shenmue could tell that No-Cure was nervous, so he tried to put him at ease, since he only wanted to ask a few questions. No-Cure declared that he was there to clear up any doubts. Seeing that No-Cure had a high surgical success rate, Shenmue presumed it was a waste of talent for him to be stuck in the warehouse. No-Cure explained that spectral medical equipment was expensive, and the budget he consumed on his own exceeded all the other doctors combined. Director Liu had chewed him out and forbidden him from performing surgeries. Shioli quickly explained to Shenmue that Director Liu had always looked to maximize profit by heavily exploiting the employees. Shenmue immediately wanted those problems to become a thing of the past. With that, he asked everyone to perform their duties with mastery, so they would be treated well. Then, he asked the nurse to help him out by handing bonuses to the other employees. Shaoli was deeply grateful, taking them all to do exactly as the boss had requested. No-Cure was really liking his new boss, but Shenmue could feel that the current medical level of the Terror Hospital was abysmal. No-Cure didn't quite catch his drift, while Shenmue placed full confidence in his competence, wanting to leave the hospital under No-Cure's management. This caught the doctor completely by surprise, making him think it was some kind of joke from his new boss. Shenmue didn't think he looked like someone who liked to fool around. No-Cure felt embarrassed and tried to take back what he said. Shenmue then encouraged No-Cure to speak openly about any concerns. No-Cure immediately informed him that to raise the medical standards, a large initial investment was required, which would lead to a long period of research and development before turning a profit. Thus, he was worried that Shenmue wouldn't have enough cash to sustain everything for that long. Shenmue then wanted to know what else was troubling him, but those were No-Cure's main points of concern. In response, Shenmue informed No-Cure that he would give him 6 months to turn that hospital into the best one in the supernatural world. No-Cure was worried, as it would take a massive amount of cash to achieve that level of prestige. However, Shenmue presumed that it was just a matter of money. He snapped his fingers and showed No-Cure that funds were not an issue, asking if that amount would be enough. No-Cure was completely incredulous, seeing that the new director was completely different from Director Liu. Furthermore, Shenmue informed him that he didn't plan on paying him a regular salary. No-Cure didn't even care. He just wanted to focus on his medical technique, so he accepted working for free. But that wasn't what Shenmue meant. He declared that he would give No-Cure a 1% share of the Terror Hospital. To No-Cure, that was incredibly valuable, while Shenmue expressed his admiration for No-Cure's passion for medicine, assuming that his skills would bring great results. Shenmue was already well aware that in the future, No-Cure would be the exclusive physician for the Ghost Kings, so this investment was a drop in the bucket at the moment. No-Cure told Shenmue not to worry, promising he would do his absolute best so that the Terror Hospital could elevate its standards in the shortest time possible. Since Shenmue knew the future, he fully believed in No-Cure's capabilities. He was thrilled to have the future miracle doctor on his side. He was going to use the hospital to get closer to even higher authorities in the supernatural world. He was merely clearing the ground. At that moment, No-Cure reminded the new owner that the hospital didn't have enough patients for him to conduct clinical trials, and without practice, everything became difficult using only theory, making it much harder to raise their overall medical standards. Shenmue told No-Cure not to worry about that, as he would handle it. No-Cure was amazed by his new boss. Shenmue then asked if No-Cure had ever wondered why the hospital had so few patients. No-Cure guessed it was because their success rate was too low, but Shenmue declared that wasn't the primary reason. Thinking it over, No-Cure presumed it was because the prices were too high. Shenmue immediately stated that he had hit the bullseye. Shenmue had checked the past records, and even the most basic dressing cost 2,000 ghost coins. Therefore, Shenmue was going to make it so that ordinary entities could actually afford treatment, and he suddenly made a brutal holy light appear before No-Cure. Seeing this, No-Cure judged that if it were completely free, the entities would assume it was a scam and would be too afraid to come to the hospital. Shenmue, on the contrary, hadn't said it would be free. He was going to launch an exclusive benefit for ordinary entities, a sort of terror health insurance. No-Cure didn't quite catch his boss's plan, which was basically a type of investment. By paying just 10 coins, an entity could get treated for free at the hospital. No-Cure was worried it might not work, but Shenmue promised he would do his utmost to make everything succeed. He then asked No-Cure to go arrange what was missing, and so No-Cure temporarily took his leave from his new boss. 10 coins were nothing to an ordinary entity, and Shenmue knew very well that there would always be entities looking to exploit loopholes. He was setting a trap for those entities. When the time came, he would use the scammers as guinea pigs for the doctors. Meanwhile, the scene shifts outside, where an entity was asking another if he had heard that the hospital had launched a new service. The truth was that the supernatural world was highly shaken up by the news. After all, the idea of paying a symbolic fee to get free, lifelong treatment at the hospital was very appealing. There were people who didn't even need treatment but wanted to test it out just to see what it was like. However, the first guy found it very strange, knowing that there is no such thing as a free lunch. At that, his partner thought he was being a total coward, declaring that he would go check it out by himself. Next, the scene changes to the on-duty operating room, where Shioli was updating the boss on the situation, informing him that sales of the health insurance had exploded. Shenmue was actually surprised, since only a single day had passed since they launched it the previous evening. With that, Chenmu wanted to know how many patients had come to the hospital for treatment during that period. She replied that there had been 200 patients in total, and 30 of them had survived. The success rate was going up. Chenmu began to presume that the doctors truly had a lot of potential, so he ordered her to keep promoting the health insurance, stating that he would cover all the expenses. He figured it wouldn't take long for his hospital to become famous throughout the supernatural world, until someone knocked on his door, and he called for them to enter. A guy stepped in and greeted the director. Chenmu immediately assumed he was there for a consultation, informing him that the exam rooms were on the first floor. But that wasn't the case. The man handed him a business card. His name was Lee Kun, and he was the president of the Undead Subway, which, by the way, was the most popular means of transportation among entities, right alongside the spectral taxi. At that moment, Chenmu realized an entity had come on his own accord to negotiate with him. He then greeted Lee Kun, who was very friendly, and shook his hand. Chenmu asked him to take a seat, wanting to know what brought Mr. Lee to his office. Lee said he was there to offer a small token of appreciation, handing over a small box. Chenmu judged that things were starting to get interesting with this crowd. Inside the box was a magnificent watch, as Lee Kun had heard that Chenmu was fond of watches. Chenmu was indeed pleased by Lee Kun's gift. Because of that, he also wanted to know the true purpose behind the visit from the director of the Undead Subway. Lee Kun, being very direct, revealed that he wanted to sell the Undead Subway to Chenmu. Chenmu was left bewildered, assuming the subway had always maintained a positive revenue. Lee Kun explained that while they weren't exactly operating at a loss at the moment, the expenses for salaries and maintenance were draining way more than they were making in profit. Thus, he hoped Chenmu could catch his drift. It was quite strange because he looked utterly desperate. Chenmu quickly told the guy to calm down. Lee Kun made it clear that if Chenmu agreed to buy the Undead Subway, he would become Chenmu's most loyal subordinate. He also mentioned that although the subway's current revenue couldn't compare to Chenmu's other properties, he could guarantee it would become highly profitable in the future. He then stood up, showing how eager he was to make progress, which was why he desperately wanted Chenmu to buy the subway. Seeing that the guy was getting ahead of himself again, Chenmu told him to sit back down and calm down a bit. Lee Kun realized he had lost his composure and quickly wanted to apologize to Chenmu. In the end, Chenmu didn't really mind being flattered by everyone, so he expressed to Lee Kun that he was indeed interested in the Undead Subway. However, before anything else, he needed to conduct a personal inspection before making a decision. Lee Kun saw no issue with that, declaring he would be at Chenmu's disposal whenever he wanted to take a look at the subway. Since Chenmu had nothing better to do at that moment, he decided they should check out the Undead Subway right then and there. Lee Kun stood up, and the scene shifts to some people waiting in a queue. Suddenly, they hear Lee Kun telling Chenmu to watch his step, which felt incredibly bizarre to the onlookers. After all, Lee Kun was a powerful entity, while Chenmu was just a human. Lee Kun was shamelessly buttering Chenmu up, acting like a man who had just met a woman who completely captivated him and wanted to please her by any means necessary. It was sickening to the people in line. However, one of the ghosts in the queue was sharp enough to realize that Chenmu was a big shot. Thus, the long-haired ghost realized he should keep his mouth shut. In any case, they were basically trash and couldn't even dream of talking to celebrities. Those guys just wanted to make a little money, wondering how they could live a lavish life like Chenmu. However, there was a certain man currently being hunted, and one thing everyone knew was that if you wanted to get rich quick, you just had to capture him. His name was Wu Mazi, a ghost general-level entity and an extremely dangerous individual. Many people were still unaware that he had managed to escape. They figured the useless guards must have been sleeping on the job, letting a 5-star criminal escape from prison. Word was that Wu Mazi had fled to Wangjiang City, meaning he was right there in their city. This realization left the long-haired ghost completely shocked. He quickly grew worried, as they could easily end up turned into mush if they ran into him on the street. Besides, they also had to worry about making it off the operating table alive. Next, the scene shifts outside, where Lee Kun apologizes to Chenmu, feeling deeply regretful for not arranging a car to pick him up in advance. He asks Chenmu to wait a moment while he calls for a ride, but it wasn't necessary, as Chenmu's driver had just arrived. It was a spectral taxi, which left Lee Kun completely slack-jawed. The skeleton driver stepped out, treating Chenmu like royalty, opening the door for him as if he were a princess. Lee Kun had no idea the director of the terror hospital was this powerful, to the point of using a spectral taxi as a personal car. The skeleton driver then smiled at Lee Kun, inviting him to get in as well. Flustered, Lee Kun climbed inside. Chenmu then informed the skeleton driver that they were heading to the central station of the Undead Subway. Another thing that left Lee Kun utterly dumbfounded was the fact that the driver was wearing the exact same watch he had just gifted to Chenmu. He felt dying of embarrassment, realizing he had just made a total fool of himself. Next, the scene shifts to the central station of the Undead Subway, where Lee Kun continued to treat Chenmu like he was the absolute center of the universe. Meanwhile, there were some girls squatting nearby. They were terrified and desperately wanted to go home, but they had a mission to complete, and it was about to begin. Suddenly, their supernatural mission prompt appeared for Chenmu as well. Their mission was to act as flight attendants and serve the passengers. However, rule number 2 stated that if the passenger was Chenmu, he could pass straight through. true. Therefore, the mission applied to him too, and he instantly completed it. He confirmed this with Lee Kun, who nodded in agreement. After all, Chen Mu was his guest of honor. The girls felt frustrated, thinking it was completely unfair, until one of them found Chen Mu's name familiar. Suddenly, the other girl's memory was triggered. Explaining that he was a major tycoon who had purchased several supernatural businesses in a row, she added that her sister even studied at Chen Mu's school. The pink-haired crazy girl was already daydreaming about dating Chen Mu. After all, she was all too eager to stop working and live a lavish, comfortable life. She thought she was being real clever. Right then, the female guard ordered all of them to shut up, telling them not to engage in idle chatter while they had a mission to do, making the three pretty girls tremble. The guard's cheeks even flushed a bit as she stared at Chen Mu, thinking that those skinny girls wouldn't stand a chance at snagging him, though truth be told, even she would like to. It was clear he was carrying himself with absolute grandeur. Just then, the train car arrived, and the three girls trembled violently. As Chen Mu stepped inside, Lee Kun followed, buttering him up. Chen Mu looked around the place, noticing there weren't many spectral passengers, until Lee Kun's phone suddenly rang. He answered it, and became absolutely furious, as those useless subordinates were half-assing their jobs. Chen Mu asked if something had happened, and Lee Kun quickly apologized, informing him that he needed to speak with the conductor. He politely asked Chen Mu to take a seat, and Chen Mu had no problem letting him handle his business. With that, Lee Kun bolted like a wild mule so as not to waste any time and leave Chen Mu waiting, though Chen Mu found it highly suspicious that Lee Kun was running like a desperate man. Taking advantage of the moment, Chen Mu decided to go take a look at the other train cars. As he walked, he ran into the three trembling girls who were currently serving the passengers. Suddenly, a fat ghost with a beer belly spotted Chen Mu. Confusing him for a staff member, he ordered Chen Mu to bring him a blanket. Chen Mu wanted to make sure this fat guy was actually talking to him, but the fat ghost still thought he had the right to treat Chen Mu like trash, calling him an insignificant human and demanding to know if he was deaf. Seeing this, the girls figured Chen Mu was about to get totally wrecked. After all, no matter how rich he was, he couldn't defeat a supernatural entity since he was just human. The two guys nearby saw that the fat ghost was looking for trouble and decided to steer clear. Just then, the guard apologized to the fat ghost, explaining that Chen Mu was not part of the mission and that she would fetch a blanket for him herself. However, the fat ghost insisted that Chen Mu be the one to get it, telling the guard not to meddle where she wasn't wanted. He even raised his hand against her. Chen Mu quickly caught the guard, telling her to be careful. Her cheeks flushed red, touched by how much of a gentleman Chen Mu was, and she looked at him gratefully. He asked if she was hurt, and she confirmed she was fine. Chen Mu kept in mind that she was a future employee of his, so he didn't want anything affecting her productivity. The fat ghost, however, didn't appreciate him playing the hero and saving a ghost. Chen Mu openly mused that the subway's security must be utter garbage to let a fat guy with such a shitty attitude inside. The fat ghost instantly blew a fuse at the insult and lunged toward Chen Mu to punch him in the face. But before he could do a single thing, Lee Kun arrived to crash the party, grabbing the fat guy's arm and demanding to know if he had lost his mind. The fat ghost froze in embarrassment upon seeing the boss of the undead subway standing right in front of him. He frantically tried to explain to Lee Kun that it was all a misunderstanding and that he was just trying to teach the arrogant human a lesson. The grand problem was that he had no idea Chen Mu was definitely not the kind of guy anyone should try to teach a lesson to. Lee Kun snapped at the fat guy, telling him he was a nobody compared to Chen Mu. Hearing Chen Mu's name, the fat ghost instantly remembered that he was the famous billionaire. It clicked in his head that he was completely screwed, having pissed off the wrong person. The fat ghost's demeanor flipped in an instant, and he dropped to his knees, begging Chen Mu for mercy. Lee Kun barked at the miserable wretch to shut up, declaring that he would personally discipline the fat guy on Chen Mu's behalf. However, Chen Mu told Lee Kun not to stress himself out over a piece of trash. Lee Kun, ever the sycophant, tried to explain to his boss that he had to punish the fat guy so he wouldn't dare cause trouble ever again. But Chen Mu didn't care at all. After all, he wouldn't be afraid of a low-level entity like him anyway. Since there was nothing left to worry about there, he told the fat guy to beat it. Lee Kun warned the fool that he was incredibly lucky to have crossed paths with such a laid-back guy, ordering him to get out of the train car immediately. Overjoyed, the fat ghost thanked them profusely for their generosity. At that moment, the female guard was completely smitten, seeing that Chen Mu truly possessed the dignity of a great tycoon, viewing him as a remarkably open-minded man. Lee Kun, who practically wanted to lick Chen Mu's boots, agreed with the guard, judging that Boss Chen's level, as he kept calling him, was something ordinary entities like them simply couldn't comprehend. Chen Mu figured they were exaggerating, but stated that a crazy guy at the ghost soldier level was hardly a threat to him. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the car where the fat ghost had fled. He never expected to run smack into a famous powerhouse of the supernatural world. He felt immensely relieved that Chen Mu hadn't taken the matter seriously. Seeing him, one of the passengers grew curious and asked what had happened. When the fat guy informed him that Chen Mu was right there, the young man was left in sheer disbelief. He hadn't even known that Chen Mu had acquired several supernatural realms, assuming that Chen Mu was simply there to complete missions. But the fat guy countered that a big shot had no need to complete missions, already figuring that Shenmue was there to either buy the undead subway or form a partnership. Right then, a man walked past and stepped on the fat ghost's foot, which pissed him off. Grabbing the man, the fat ghost snapped, asking if he was blind. However, that man was none other than the escaped convict, Wu Mazi. He coldly asked what the fat guy planned to do about it. The fat ghost, too stupid to thank God for a second chance to walk away, demanded that Wu Mazi drop to his knees and beg for forgiveness. Wu Mazi then pulled off his mask, wanting the fat guy to be absolutely sure about who should be kneeling. The fat ghost instantly recognized Wu Mazi, his mouth hanging open in horror. Wu Mazi, who wasn't one for idle chatter, drew his knife and drove it straight into the fat ghost's flabby gut, pleased that the wretch at least knew who he was dealing with. The fat ghost was skewered instantly. A blonde passenger, upon having the fat ghost collapse right into his lap, began screaming in sheer desperation that ghosts were being murdered. Meanwhile, Shenmue grew curious and asked Lee Kun if some serious trouble had occurred to make him rush out so frantically earlier. Lee Kun explained that they had just received a report that a 5-star wanted criminal had arrived in Wangjiang City. Shenmue was caught off guard by this information. He recalled that in the supernatural apocalypse of his past life, there was no such thing as wanted ghost criminals. Lee Kun further explained that the criminal's name was Wu Mazi, the most ruthless robber in the supernatural world. Back when he was originally caught, it required sacrificing 3 ghost generals of the same level just to capture him. Suddenly, they heard the door click open. Wu Mazi appeared at the exact moment they were talking about him. Lee Kun froze in shock. Wu Mazi had been hiding on the train the entire time. The girls began to tremble with fear all over again, terrified of dying. The female guard begged Wu Mazi not to kill her, crying out that she still had 50 years left on her mortgage. Lee Kun immediately ordered the emergency braking system to be activated, but Wu Mazi had no intention of letting anyone escape. Unleashing his energy, he struck Lee Kun. Lee Kun's face grew pale with worry. Wu Mazi had used a skill to completely lock down his administrative permissions over the realm. Wu Mazi was already sick of the small talk. He demanded that Lee Kun hand over the human, referring to Shenmue, promising that he would let the other entities leave safely if he complied. But Lee Kun wasn't crazy enough to let a high-risk criminal lay a finger on his boss. Stepping firmly in front of Shenmue, he blocked the way. Wu Mazi found it hilarious that a mere ghost was attempting to stand against him. Not wanting to waste any more time, he ordered Lee Kun to get out of the way, making it clear that Shenmue was his only target. At that exact moment, Shenmue tapped Lee Kun and told him he had done enough. Shenmue then stepped toward Wu Mazi, while Lee Kun begged him not to do it, claiming he could hold the line for a while. But Shenmue didn't want the president of the undead subway to worry. He had his own way of dealing with high-risk criminals. He calmly asked to confirm if Wu Mazi was indeed the ghost general from the wanted poster who made a living robbing the assets of various entities. Wu Mazi confirmed it, expecting the human to cower and beg for mercy. Shenmue didn't even flinch. He acknowledged that Wu Mazi's skills were formidable, but openly wondered why such a powerhouse chose a life of crime. He asked if money was the issue, offering that if it was, he could easily pay Wu Mazi's bail so he could come work for him. After all, Wu Mazi was strong, and hiring him would massively upgrade the security level of Shenmue's properties. Hearing this, Lee Kun felt a deep sense of respect, realizing Shenmue truly was someone worth trusting. Even when facing a dangerous outlaw, Shenmue was willing to offer him a chance at a fresh start. However, Wu Mazi burst into roaring laughter. Lee Kun couldn't fathom what he found so funny. Wu Mazi genuinely thought it was ridiculous for a human to offer him a job. Shenmue remained serious, confirming that if Wu Mazi swore his loyalty, he was prepared to offer a benefits package with an annual salary of 1 million. This naturally piqued Lee Kun's curiosity. Shenmue was tossing around a 1 million annual salary as if it were pocket change, proving once again that the man was filthy rich. While Shenmue waited for an answer, Wu Mazi made it crystal clear that he had no desire to work for anyone. He despised the very concept of being someone's employee, emphasizing that he preferred to spend the money he stole with his own hands. Shenmue sighed, realizing he was dealing with nothing but a parasite, and decided it was no longer worth trying to reason with him. But Wu Mazi was a madman who didn't care about negotiations anyway. He lunged toward the human, demanding he hand over his money immediately if he wanted to keep his life. Once again, Lee Kun threw himself in front of Shenmue, telling him to get back. Losing his patience entirely, Wu Mazi snarled at Lee Kun, calling him weak, and delivered a brutal kick straight to his stomach. Lee Kun stumbled back, blood coughing up from his mouth. Seeing this, Shenmue ordered the female guard to take Lee Kun to a safe place, while Lee Kun, despite his injuries, still looked back at Shenmue with deep concern. With that, since the human had already extended a friendly invitation and had been rejected in such a manner, he decided he would show no more mercy. Meanwhile, Wu Mazi didn't believe for a second that this human could easily handle him, so he decided to pull a knife on Shenmue. However, with a very subtle movement, Shenmue made the big guy drop the blade. Wu Mazi was caught completely off guard by that move, and Shenmue saw it as the perfect opportunity to test his new ability. He activated his spectral transformation, quickly turning into one of them. Wu Mazi was left utterly confused as to how Shenmue could possess a spectral ability. The aura Shenmue was emitting was terrifying, putting him almost at the strength level of a ghost general. Wu Mazi quickly realized things had turned ugly for him. Meanwhile, Shenmue, smiling, wanted to know if Wu Mazi had suddenly gotten scared, unable to believe that the highly touted and arrogant Wu Mazi only attacked the weak, proving to be a total coward. Wu Mazi got extremely pissed off by what he just heard, making it clear that he was a pure blood, unlike Shenmue, who was only undergoing a temporary transformation. He then tried to attack Shenmue, wanting to completely ruin the human, but his punch simply did absolutely nothing to Shenmue. At that moment, Shenmue assumed that Wu Mazi must have skipped lunch that day. Wu Mazi was completely stunned that the blow he landed had absolutely no effect, so Shenmue decided to make that sucker taste his fist, hitting him beautifully. Wu Mazi ended up crashing onto the train car's bench. Li Kun was astonished, as Shenmue had just shown him that he wasn't just a guy with money, he also had the strength to fight. The female guard fell even harder for Shenmue. At that moment, Shenmue wanted to know if his opponent could get back up. Wu Mazi was trembling, making it very clear that Shenmue shouldn't get cocky because he had just caught him off guard. However, Shenmue couldn't hide his curiosity. He wanted to know if the criminal's face was hurting. With his cheek swollen, Wu Mazi still had the nerve to claim it didn't hurt. Showing how kind-hearted he was, Shenmue declared that Wu Mazi could cry if it hurt, as it was no shame for any ghost. Wu Mazi grew incredibly irritated, tears streaming down his face as he desperately wanted to show him what a real ghost was capable of. While Shenmue waited for the criminal to attack, Wu Mazi tried to land another blow. Shenmue defended himself as if it were the easiest thing in the world. Wu Mazi couldn't understand how his attacks were completely ineffective. After all, Shenmue's body wasn't made of iron. He tried throwing multiple punches all at once, but he couldn't inflict any damage on Shenmue, who quickly teased Wu Mazi, telling him his massage was way too weak. Finding himself in such a challenging predicament, Wu Mazi decided to use his full strength, and yet, he still couldn't do a thing. Shenmue kept mocking him, jokingly playing along as if the attack had a lot of weight behind it. Right as his armor materialized, Wu Mazi stared at the heavy armor of death, completely baffled as to how it had ended up in Shenmue's hands. Shenmue quickly told the big guy not to worry about it, grabbing his hand and slamming him to the ground like it was nothing. Shenmue figured it was finally his turn to strike after so many attempts from Wu Mazi. The female guard thought Shenmue was incredible, while Wu Mazi swore that Shenmue would pay for this, promising he wouldn't let it slide and would definitely return for revenge. Suddenly, Shenmue remembered something. He turned back and approached Wu Mazi, who instantly became very nervous. Shenmue then asked if Wu Mazi was suffering too much, self-deprecatingly claiming to be a gentle soul who couldn't bear to see entities in pain. He then set out to end Wu Mazi's misery, stepping on him as if he were a cockroach. Wu Mazi couldn't believe it and didn't want to die at Shenmue's hands. In the end, as far as the human was concerned, it was pure self-defense. After all, he was dealing with a 5-star wanted criminal. Li Kun was still there to witness that the action was indeed self-defense, and the female guard also declared she could testify. Wu Mazi was furious, realizing he had fallen right into their trap, and began to tremble. Shenmue wanted to know if the big guy had any last words. Ultimately, Wu Mazi preferred to die rather than have to work, which Shenmue found to be beautiful final words before crushing him like a cockroach. Shortly after, the crew went over to retrieve Wu Mazi's body. Li Kun expressed his gratitude for Shenmue's heroic action, though Shenmue simply felt he was doing his duty. The fat guy was also taken away, as he was in a lot of pain. Naturally, the medics were there to save him, which made the fat guy quite happy. As they transported him to the horror hospital, Shenmue judged the fat guy to be excellent raw material for the facility. Next, the scene shifts to the CEO's office. Li Kun couldn't forget what had happened inside those subway cars, beaming with joy because Shenmue had protected the reputation of the undead subway, and Shenmue saw no reason not to protect one of his future business ventures. Li Kun immediately grew excited, seeing that Shenmue was implying he would buy the undead subway. Shenmue saw a great future in that subway line, so he wanted to know its value. Li Kun promptly declared that he would love to work under Shenmue's command. He was basically handing over the undead subway for free. Shenmue was surprised, pointing out that doing so wouldn't be appropriate, but Li Kun insisted it was completely appropriate, so Shenmue decided to do things Li Kun's way. He never would have imagined that the day would come when an entity would just gift him a supernatural realm. He also wondered if this was a benefit of increasing his power and combat strength. With that, Li Kun brought out the contract for Shenmue, who signed it, thoroughly pleased to have acquired yet another major venture. He then announced to the female guard and Li Kun that, starting that very day, the salary of every single employee on the undead subway would be tripled. The guard was radiant with happiness and thanked Shenmue profusely. However, he told them not to thank him just yet, as he was giving them 1 week to resolve all environmental and maintenance issues inside the subway. The guard promised him that everything would be left spotless, while Li Kun already requested that Shenmue just call him Xiao Li. Shenmue then informed Xiao Li that he would receive an annual salary of 1 million, plus a 1% stake in the undead subway, which was a far better deal than back when Li Kun actually owned the place. Shenmue also declared declared that upgrading the subway's security was urgent, so Xiaoli needed to seek out powerful entities of good character to serve as security guards. Li Kun was thrilled to get started on his task. Meanwhile, Shenmue reflected on gastronomy, education, healthcare, and transportation. These were the sectors bound to become the absolute best in the future, and he had managed to buy them all up in advance. He had practically established his base in that apocalypse, ruling over it like a king. With that, the scene shifts to the Shan Shui condominium. After being busy for so many days, Shenmue just wanted to unwind a bit, until his smartphone rang. It was Wang Qixi calling, which caught him by surprise. He answered right away, asking if a serious problem had come up. Old Wang immediately informed his boss that something was wrong. Several entities had gathered at the gate of the Shan Shui condominium, and all of them were demanding to speak with him. Shenmue asked if they were there to cause trouble, but it was nothing like that. Those entities were actually there to do business. Outside, a chaotic scene was unfolding in front of the Shan Shui condominium, to the point where they had to form a proper line just to stop everyone from shoving one another. Just then, Shenmue made his appearance. The skeleton, Wang Qixi, pointed out the entities waiting to negotiate. Shenmue was pleased with his subordinates' work, while the entities became utterly desperate to pitch to Shenmue, even bickering among themselves over who would get to speak first. Treating them like an elementary school classroom, Shenmue ordered everyone to quiet down. Like obedient school children, the entities began shushing each other to listen to what Shenmue, whom they were already calling boss, long before making any deals, had to say. Shenmue then asked if they all had business proposals to negotiate, and that was exactly it. One desperate guy stepped forward, explaining that he was there to sell his supernatural realm. He practically rushed up to Shenmue, begging to be saved by him. But he wasn't alone. There were countless other entities begging for Shenmue's salvation. In the end, the human was well aware that boosting his fame was highly beneficial. After all, the cattle were willingly walking right into the slaughterhouse. And if he remembered correctly, the supernatural world was about to plunge into a severe economic crisis very soon. When that crisis hit, many owners of supernatural realms would be forced to declare bankruptcy due to a lack of capital. Once they all went broke, these realm owners would be completely erased by the power of the world's rules. Therefore, it was entirely understandable why they were out there, desperate for any kind of lifeline. The entity who had begged to be saved first anxiously asked if Shenmue had reached a decision. However, Shenmue casually declared that the amount requested was pocket change. The entity was instantly overjoyed, seeing that the rumors were true. To Shenmue, acquiring realms really was like buying a mere grain of rice. Shenmue, being clever and knowing what the future held, self-righteously claimed to the entities that he simply couldn't bear to see them losing money because he was such a kind-hearted soul. The entity's eyes practically lit up, declaring that Shenmue truly possessed absurd generosity and nobility. However, Shenmue also asked them not to rush, stating that while he had the means, he also wanted to see how sincere everyone was. Catching on, the entity immediately offered Shenmue a 30% discount. And just like that, widespread chaos broke out once again, with everyone bickering over who could offer a higher discount percentage. Some people were so desperate that they were even willing to give their properties away for free, just as Li Kun from the undead subway had done before. The crowd even started fighting among themselves, assuming that some owners were acting in bad faith by dropping their prices so exorbitantly. They quickly began arguing that this was completely ruining the market. Seeing the mess, Shenmue demanded they stop fighting immediately, making it crystal clear that they weren't random wandering ghosts, but actual business owners. He then told them to take a good look at themselves, suggesting they ought to have a little shame. Hearing that from the human, the entities felt quite embarrassed. They didn't want Shenmue to get angry either, so they explained that everyone there was in the same boat, and desperation was simply getting the best of them. Shenmue understood perfectly well that they didn't want to go bankrupt, and still wanted to make some money, but he also had a few demands of his own, and everyone listened intently. Shenmue wanted a single, flat rate. He would acquire their properties for 40% of their actual value. In the end, everyone agreed. However, Shenmue also declared that according to the rules, he first had to complete each realm's quest to officially acquire it. He informed them that his energy was limited, so he would only be making purchases until midnight that day. Therefore, everyone there had to make up their minds quickly. That announcement caught everyone off guard. The first entity who had begged Shenmue for salvation immediately pleaded with him to visit his bookstore first, stating it was very close by. Naturally, another entity got pissed off, unwilling to let things be that simple, and chaos erupted yet again. Meanwhile, the bookstore owner begged the crowd to trust him, promising he wouldn't waste Shenmue's time. With that, the scene shifts to the front of the terror bookstore. Three frustrated young men were standing outside. They had arrived at the agreed time, but the bookstore still hadn't opened. Their quest requirement was to locate the book Yin Ping Mei, but there were 108,000 books inside the store. To make matters worse, the quest had a strict 1-hour time limit. Suddenly, one of the guys noticed something happening and pointed down the street, where they spotted Shenmue being followed by a massive crowd, with the bookstore owner leading the way. The three young men were utterly terrified. They had never seen so many entities gathered together at once. They feared the creatures were coming to get them. Just then, Shenmue asked if they were there to do a quest quest, and the three guys nodded in confirmation. Shenmue then told them it was their lucky day and that they should follow him inside. As they entered, the bookstore owner proudly introduced the place to Shenmue, leaving the three young men completely stunned by the sheer volume of books. One of the following entities spoke up, warning the bookstore owner not to waste Shenmue's time. The bookstore owner snapped back, telling him not to say such nonsense. Either way, Shenmue asked the other entities to leave the bookstore owner in peace, figuring he would resolve his issue quickly. After all, Shenmue needed to get the quest done. The bookstore owner hurried inside to avoid wasting time, while another entity went as far as to offer Shenmue a chair, sucking up to him just like everyone else. Shenmue sat down, leaving the other entities feeling kicking themselves for forgetting such a detail. After all, they could have earned some major brownie points if they had thought to offer Shenmue a chair first. Meanwhile, the three young men were completely baffled as to why these terrifying entities were brown-nosing Shenmue. Suddenly, the bookstore owner reappeared with the exact book needed to complete the quest in hand. Shenmue took the book, successfully completing the mission, and the bookstore owner instantly rejoiced. Shenmue quickly told the bookstore owner not to waste any time and to bring out the contract. He signed it, securing yet another property, and then called for the next person in line. He immediately began following the next entity to inspect their shop and complete the next quest. The three young men couldn't believe their luck. They had just been handed a cleared quest on a silver platter. Suddenly, one of them remembered the name Shenmue, recognizing him as the major hotshot who had been buying up multiple supernatural realms. The others had heard the rumors too, and couldn't believe they were standing right in front of the man himself. Jaw dropped, they simply wanted to thank the big shot for saving their lives. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the ghost grocery store, where Shenmue was walking in. The quest here was simply to accept a gift from the owner. Nothing more, nothing less. He found it incredibly bizarre that a quest could be that easy, until the grocery store owner explained that he had purposely changed the rules. He was worried Shenmue might get thirsty, so he had bought a human beverage specifically to help him complete the quest. Thus, Shenmue accepted the gift, successfully wrapping up the mission. Seeing this, the other entities who hadn't thought of that trick immediately began rewriting their own quest rules. Shenmue signed another contract, naturally leaving the day-to-day management to the previous owners, and continued on his way, knocking out one quest after another in rapid succession. Then, the scene cuts to a long-haired girl who wants to know if the girl next to her has heard the news. She explains that many people saw a group of entities walking down the street at the same time that day. Hearing this, the woman walking with her becomes terrified, suggesting it would be much better if they went home right away. Suddenly, the long-haired girl feels a sudden, chilling cold out of nowhere. Just then, her friend notices that there are entities right in front of them, and they are carrying a box. This terrifies both of them, and they quickly run away so the ghosts won't catch them. Meanwhile, those entities are looking quite happy. Inside the box, Shenmue, who is being carried, asks them what that sudden noise was. However, the entities don't know what to say. One of them explains that he only saw two pink figures flashing past very quickly. Seeing that it is already midnight, Shenmue asks the entities to stop there. At that, the entities ask Shenmue, whom they call boss, to step out of the box, which is called a palanquin. Shenmue gets down and asks how the day's harvest went. The entity wearing glasses approaches him, looking very happy, and informs him that Shenmue acquired a total of 187 scenarios that day. He then shows him a contract, which is for the final supernatural scenario in Wangjang City. Shenmue quickly signs the contract. He feels a surge of energy showing that he possesses the strongest power yet, even when compared to all his previous ones. Suddenly, he sees his space of consciousness and is left completely astonished. A voice then congratulates him on unlocking all the supernatural scenarios in Wangjang City, informing him that his strength has risen to the peak of a ghost boss, giving him the right to assign any human using the scenarios under his name. Shenmue stares at a hidden octopus that looks extremely bizarre, but at the same time he finds this new function very interesting. The other entities standing around are completely shocked by the powerful pressure, realizing that Shenmue is getting stronger and stronger. His eyes even begin to glow. Noticing that it is already late, Shenmue tells all the entities to go back and rest. The entities quickly bow to their boss, saying goodbye. Shenmue reflects that he can finally relax a bit, and right on cue, his private driver arrives. Shenmue gets into the car and tells the skeleton driver to take him to the Shanshou condominium. They begin their journey until they pass by a person walking along the street. Shenmue finds it very strange that someone would have the courage to wander the streets at such an hour. Suddenly, the guy pulls a bomb out of his bag and throws it at Shenmue's car, wishing for his death. Shenmue's eyes widen as he sees this, and the bomb causes a massive explosion. The young man who threw the bomb is thrilled, believing he succeeded. However, as the smoke begins to clear, the car is revealed to be in perfect condition. Shenmue's private driver is worried, asking if the boss is okay. Furious, Shenmue tells his subordinate that he is fine and that the person was actually targeting him. The skeleton tells his boss not to worry, promising to catch the guy immediately, but Shenmue tells his driver not to rush, confident that the guy won't be able to escape. He then calls Aji, asking for help to apprehend someone. Next, the scene cuts to the young man who had suddenly attacked Shenmue. He is panting panting heavily and feeling completely exhausted. He ran so hard that he believes he is finally safe, until he spots a ride-sharing car. Thinking he is in luck, he runs toward the car to request a ride. At that exact moment, Ajay opens the door and bursts out laughing, making it clear that they managed to catch the brat. The young man is left jaw-dropped, unable to believe that this is an entity. The entity grabs him by the collar of his long-sleeved shirt, telling him to shut up and get in the car immediately. As the young man begs the entity not to do this to him, Ajay orders Bin to drive, and Bin does as he is told. Having heard Ajay's name, the young man who attacked Chenmu begins to tremble. He protests that he didn't do anything to Ajay and doesn't even know how he offended him. He begs Ajay to have mercy and let him go, but Ajay tells him to shut up, declaring that if his boss hadn't ordered to bring him back in one piece, he would have destroyed him already. The scene then shifts to the Shanshui condominium, where Ajay is carrying the shameless brat. He throws the young man onto the floor like a piece of trash, right where Chenmu is sitting. Declaring that they had finally met again, he spoke with an absurd level of calmness. The brat couldn't believe Chenmu was standing right there, thinking the bomb should have killed him. Ajay started to think the punk was asking for a beating, being so audacious to speak to his boss that way, so he slapped the kid across the face just to teach him a lesson. Chenmu then demanded that the young man tell him right away who had ordered him to do it. The young man didn't put up any resistance and explained that it was the lord of the hidden city. At that moment, Chenmu grew pensive. Unlike other places where changes happen gradually, the neighboring city of Linshui had transformed entirely into a supernatural scenario overnight, changing its name to the Hidden City. Chenmu hadn't heard much about the lord of the hidden city in his past life, but to be the ruler of an entire city, Chenmu presumed he must be a ghost king. He wanted to find out from the young man how things were over there right now, but the kid didn't know what to say. Ajay started to get pissed off, convinced the brat was trying to hide something. But before he could hit the young man again, Chenmu told Ajay to cut it out. Ajay tried to explain to his boss that giving the punk a beating would make him spill the information. However, Chenmu deemed it unnecessary, as he had his own methods for making the young man talk, showing that he had the truth spray in his hands. Ajay's jaw dropped seeing that in his boss's hands. Chenmu immediately sprayed a bit of the truth spray on the young man, who wanted to know what Chenmu had just sprayed on him. Chenmu explained that it was just a little hallucinatory, telling the kid not to worry, and made it very clear that he would soon be an idiot who told everything he knew. Ajay then dropped to his knees and told his boss that he had disappointed him. Chenmu was extremely confused upon hearing that. Ajay immediately started flailing his arms and crying, explaining that the day before, he had secretly worked half an hour of overtime. The other entities in the room couldn't believe it, completely lost, since Ajay's name wasn't on the overtime log for the previous day. Crying at that point, Ajay explained he had discovered that Manager Lee was forging her own overtime log, so he asked her to erase his as well. He remembered pinning Manager Lee against the wall, figuring she wouldn't want the boss to know she was doing secret overtime either. In the end, he felt terrible for disobeying his boss's orders, feeling like a piece of trash ghost. At that, the other two entities picked him up and declared he had gone too far, because he was doing something so great and hadn't invited them. Chenmu felt a massive wave of secondhand embarrassment at that moment. However, seeing that those entities were lacking discipline, he declared that Ajay and Li Xiaoxiao wouldn't escape punishment. Meanwhile, the young man succumbed to the effects of the truth spray, declaring that his head was spinning as his eyes began to glow.